What's up, everybody? This is Karak with ACG, and I'm here with Abssii. Thank you, Abssii, for joining in.
Yeah, of course.
And Victor Magnuson from Fatshark Games, working on
Hello.
Darktide, worked on Vermintide 1 and 2. Darktide's the new one coming out. What's the date officially for Darktide? At least for right now.
30th of November.
All right.
November 30th.
Hey, a week after my birthday. Works out well,
That's
you know?
good. That's good.
We had two people on our Discord who it is their birthday, and they were like, dude, that's
Dude,
awesome.
November birthdays, man. Everyone's parents, you know, they did it in February and Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Exactly. It's Valentine's kids.
You can track it.
That's true.
So people who are listening, we're going to talk about everything. We're going to ask some questions about Vermintide and rolling into Darktide so that people get an idea of what Victor and the company and the team have all done when we talk about moving to another, to another game from an original that is considered by many to be one of the better, 4-person. What do we call those? I mean, what is that genre even? Is it like 4-person
I guess Left 4 Dead started it kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and then it blossomed.
And then and then it blossomed.
It's definitely in the vein of Left 4 Dead. I mean, we're not ashamed at all of saying that Left 4 Dead was
it's a good place to
by
be.
far the biggest influence
sure.
on Vermintide. We even said one of the reasons why we wanted to do Vermintide was nobody was doing Left 4 Dead 3, so we went let's do Left 4 Dead 3, but in Warhammer. So,
how many games do you guys think are done that way? We talked about this. Cyberpunk, it sold well, right? But it does have its issues. And I personally believe there has to be multiple companies going, guys, we could probably nail a Cyberpunk-style game. Shadowrun is one of the larger IPs. Deus Ex, of course. We've already heard some thought processes around that. But first of all, so people know you've come on. This will be like the 4th or 5th podcast with me. But can you explain what you do,
Sure.
and maybe some of the past games you've worked on, and then if your role has changed, moving into Darktide or Vermintide, and any of the history for you.
So I've been with Fatshark for almost 14 years now in February. So I worked at Fatshark pretty much the entirety of Fatshark's existence. I worked on every game that we have created in some capacity. Some of them I didn't work on because we have multiple projects at the same time, so I wasn't officially working on them, but in one way or another, I've been working on everything. I started out as QA. I was the first QA at Fatshark. First game I worked on was Lead and Gold, which was our first sort of solo title. Fatshark existed for about a year before I joined in. We were doing sort of work for hire, helping other studios complete games. So the first game Fatshark worked on was the Terminator Salvation game made by Grin. We did all the rail sequences in that game, and then I started working there, and I've been working there for 14 years. Now I am head of design, which means I'm head of level design, game design, and sound design. I am a game designer from the start. That's sort of my company role. But on a day-to-day, on a project, I am the team captain of the world team, which means that we make all the levels basically. So our team makes all the missions. So I work a hell of a lot with the level designers and the sound designers and the art department, environment art, level art, stuff like that. So that's what I do on a daily basis. But then at Fatshark, a lot of us have multiple hats. So my second hat is head of design. So I also recruit most of the designers, level designers, stuff like that, and just make sure that we have good people and everybody's happy and stuff like that.
At 15 years, which is a long time in game. I think anybody would agree that 15 years is probably a very long time almost at any developer. For example, Bonnie Ross, who recently left Microsoft, I think she was 25 years total at Microsoft, if I remember right, and then 15 at 343 or something. What's one of the biggest changes you've noticed in 15 years? It doesn't even have to be with Fatshark. I just mean in the industry, but it can also be at Fatshark. Has it been engine? The engines, of course, have been having a huge influx, man.
And game development as a whole, with all their advances and everything.
Probably the biggest change, and it changed quite a few times, is the sort of way we sell games or how games are made and how you make a product out of them. When I started, it was Lead and Gold was one of the first games on Xbox Arcade, or was supposed to be on Xbox Arcade, and that was like super new. And games like, what was it, like Peggle, and what was the first sort of
like Geometry Wars
really,
and stuff.
Geometry Wars, and this really small. So it opened up for smaller studios to be able to create smaller games and get a place and the possibility to reach out to more people. So that was like the first thing that really changed everything for us. And then everything going digital. And I mean, Steam was around way before I started, but like how Steam has evolved into sort of what it is today, has changed stuff a lot. I mean, Steam has always been our major platform, like our biggest platform for all of our games. All of our games, or Vermintide series, has turned into sort of service type games because people want us to keep making stuff for it, so we keep making stuff for it. I mean, at Vermintide, we didn't plan to be like that. Like when we created it, we just created a Vermintide, like a game, and then people wanted more maps, so we made more maps, and people wanted more careers, so we made stuff like that. So that's an evolution, I think. Like you have to think about. I think the game turns out better if you think about that stuff from the start, so you can build it from the start with that in mind.
Versus maybe adding.
You guys.
Versus like having to think of it afterwards, and you've made all these decisions in the development where that becomes really difficult. Like that definitely happened in Vermintide 1. There was a lot of things that we had done, just random decisions that you do in development, that made it really hard after a while for us to add more stuff.
Gotcha.
Like the VO system or whatever. It was a bunch of things, and we tried to do it a little better in Vermintide 2, and Darktide has even more of that sort of forethought. Like every system is in the game has the sort of baked in from the design that it is something that we can build upon for years and years and years.
Yeah, I was gonna say you guys like really knocked it out of the park with DLC for Vermintide 2. My favorite being the drunk mission. I fucking love that mission.
I was very much part of that. Yeah,
it's awesome, man. It's really awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And I'm guessing you guys have like. Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
No. But it was like was it the 1 year anniversary? I think it was the 1 year anniversary. We wanted to do something just stupid. Like we've done all these sort of more serious missions and everything. We just wanted to give the players something that is a bit wacky, and also like every mission had to be sort of the same length and stuff like that, since people play them to get loot. And if one mission is sort of shorter or longer or something like that, it either won't get played or it get played all the time. So but with that mission, the idea was it's only going to show up whenever we have like a celebration. So let's go insane and just do some weird.
Yeah, you guys have to like keep getting drunk, stay getting drunk throughout the whole mission. It was amazing.
You know,
I'm guessing you have.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No,
I was just gonna say, I'm guessing you have plans for the longevity of Darktide as well already put in place.
Definitely.
I think that when you look at games as a service too, like your guys' idea, and this is just what I've seen, is different than a lot of people, where I think when I hear games as a service, I'm thinking something completely negative. And you guys have steered well away from the things that I mean, you guys have admitted, you know, you've had a patch that didn't work out or blah, blah, blah. It's not the same thing as what I'm talking about, where games as a service is basically like, here's a battle pass, everything's locked behind it. And I think one of the big problems with games as a service is, as a term, it really means 85 different things. And what we haven't done is figured out a way to say, all right, so for example, when I was growing up, it was expansions, not DLC.
Exactly.
It was Shivering Isles, which made you not believe what you were seeing. However, the big problem with games now and games back then was the bump to new games people will instantly go to if you don't deliver continual content. And, you know, so that idea of DLC is great. Blood and Wine did it. I mean, it's Abssii's favorite DLC, or maybe the Stone one.
No, Hearts of Stone is my favorite.
But that's a very rare thing. We're not all CDPR, and CDPR wasn't even themselves when they made Cyberpunk. So let's just be honest. Success continually is very difficult to do in the video game market. But what I think I get why people are so nervous about games as a service, and it's because, dude, it's wrapped up with micros, NFTs now. It's wrapped up with so many things that if you try to do something different, you have to really sit and explain, because somebody can go off for 1 second and be like, okay, it's for sure this, and not realize. What I liked about Vermintide was that you guys had, I mean, are we calling them expansions or just DLC?
We call them DLC, but that had its problems as well, because some of them was paid and some of them were free.
Yeah, right.
Back then, and this has changed as well. Like when we did Vermintide 1, we actually had, it was hard for us to release something for free because then it didn't show up in Steam. So nobody really knew about it. So it didn't make sense for us at all to do that.
Right.
So we actually sort of had to charge for stuff
to get some kind of eye on it.
To get some kind of traction, and just sort of, it didn't make sense to just release something and nobody knew about it. Like so that's also something, but that has changed now. Now you can do like free updates and you still get like a presence on the store page and stuff like that, so people actually know that you released it, which is nice. But yeah, I mean, games as a service, it is a really tricky thing. I mean, I get the same sort of knee-jerk reaction as anybody else does when they hear that, but at the same time, it's the, I mean, Vermintide and the games we make, they function very well as a service game. I mean, people have played Vermintide for 8,000 hours. Of course, we have to create more content for them to play. It's insane. I mean, I'd never imagined that somebody would play a game that I have made for 8,000 hours. It's insane to me, but that's what people do. And if they do that, we need to give them something to do. So, and if we're gonna keep working on the games, we need to charge somehow. So either you do like packets, like expansions, DLCs, whatever you call it, or you do some kind of microtransaction stuff, and that can be good or it can be bad. Like you have to figure that out. So it's a difficult decision, but at some point we have to make money because we're a company, so we have to charge in some way. We try to find the best way where we think we can make enough money to keep working on the game, at the same time not piss people off and feel that people feel like they are paying for something that is valuable and that is good. And I don't know, but it's a really tricky, that's a super tricky situation for game devs.
The reason why I like to have you guys on too is because you just described something that I would say 99% of people don't know, which is if you had originally done something free on Steam, there would be no traction because at that original time they weren't, you weren't popping up on the store page, which I wasn't even, dude, it wasn't even. And then you also mentioned something that just blew my mind, which is, of course, a shorter mission, if it's got more gold or whatever, will be played more than a longer mission that doesn't.
Yeah.
And the moment you said it, I was like, that set off like a little light bulb above my head, because now I sort of understand why I hear people talk about meta sometimes in your games or other games where they're like, we're running this, and a lot of times I'm like, that's grind to me. That honestly, I like, and I get why people like it, but I don't really grind even MMOs. I'm more of a, if it's content, so I'll check out your DLC, but I won't sit there. But now I sort of get it. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, like Vermintide 1, everybody played Magnus Tower, the first mission, which was the first mission. It was like the most straightforward mission. And it was played like 60% more than any other mission. I don't know the exact number, but it was like, we had this Korean guy that broke our backend, or he started crashing because he's reached like level 999. And he was like, the system couldn't handle 1,000. So he started crashing. And when we looked at his data, he pretty much only played that mission. And that was because it was like the easiest mission. It was the mission that people felt most comfortable with. I don't know if it was the shortest, but it was like perceived to be the shortest and the easiest mission. So everybody just played that. And I mean, sure, that's fine. But at the same time, people will get bored after a while if you just play one mission. So that's a problem. We tried to solve it in Vermintide 2 by adding the quick play button, so people could that was the easiest way to find the game, and then it would sort of direct you in different ways instead of just playing the same mission. So that's like one of the reasons for the quick play button in Vermintide 2 was to make sure that people had a more varied experience and didn't burn out on just playing the same mission over and over and over again.
Yeah, I feel like right now with games, like with the internet these days, it's like people are going to post the meta always. People are going to post the best builds, the best, methods to do things. Has that like kind of changed from a design perspective, how you make these kind of, customizations to let's say talents, to levels?
Definitely. There are ideas that we come up with that we don't do because we realize if we do this, people will abuse it, so we can't do it. So we have to rethink it or redo it. So there has been really good ideas, or really fun ideas. Especially, it's usually this would be really fun. Like this would be a really fun thing, whatever it is. But But if we do this way, it's gonna break the game. People are gonna only do this, or they're gonna abuse it in this way, and so we can't do it this way. We have to come up with some other way. So that's one of the parts of game design that annoys me the most, where you have like a good idea, but you can't do it because of reason. Guy on the internet breaks the system and like do like this, and it just becomes this weird sort of thing where everybody has to run backwards through the missions because that's the fastest way of leveling up or whatever it is. Like and that's really sad. But yeah, and also, I mean, we think about it when it comes to patches and stuff like that, because we want to, you don't want to have a stale meta, so you want to sometimes switch it up and like do something that's like just completely sort of turns everything on its head, and people have to like, oh shit, adapt. I don't know what to do now, and I have to think up again, and like there's like, it takes a while, and then the meta sort of establishes.
Yeah, because like the beginning of the patch, when you're theory crafting, that's like the most exciting time, right?
Yeah, when you're trying to figure out what is actually like what is going to work, there's a little bit more experimentation in those moments.
Did you guys play classic World of Warcraft when it came?
Yes.
Oh, hell
yeah. I'm playing Wrath of the Lich King now as well.
I'm doing that as well. But I mean, that was an experience because
it was very different.
It was so different from when we played it back in the day. I played World of Warcraft since beta.
Yeah.
Like vanilla beta. And I mean, now everything was known. Like you knew exactly what to do. You knew what to.
Bro, the raids are so easy now.
Yeah, everything was super easy because everybody knew everything, and you also knew exactly which, like, okay, while leveling up, you should do this dungeon, and you should only look for this item, and you should have like this is exactly. You don't need anything else. Don't do that. That's just stupid. It's just a waste of time.
Or there are these add-ons that give you an arrow and tell you, okay, now you move this way.
Curse, wasn't it? Curse. Curse was one of them.
Curse has all the add-ons.
Add-ons, all the
add-ons. They have all the add-ons.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I mean, it completely changed that game because you knew everything. Everything was known. The meta was already established. Everything was there. So it's like, it's become a completely different game. It's still fun. It's still nostalgic and all that stuff. I mean, I'm playing Wrath right now.
Same.
And it's like, for me, it's like my comfort food. It's like I just love leveling up and just doing all that stuff. But at the same time, it's not at all the same thing. The magic of exploration and not knowing and doing
MMOs will never be the same, man.
No, exactly. Yeah. When I played World of Warcraft the first time, it was like such an experience and such a journey and adventure, and like going into Ashenvale the first time and getting ganked before I even knew it was PvP and shit like that. It was like, what the fuck? Like we were like hiding behind trees and like everything was so sort of innocent and fun. And now it's just like, no, this is how you do it.
For MMOs, one of the things I would love is to go into places that were way too high and sneak and see if I could kite around enemies. And we have old video. We're talking, I had to record it with a camcorder because I didn't even have a CPU recorder at the time, of us playing original World of Warcraft on a hacked Windows 98 SE edition to get the memory high enough to play. And we were playing it and we were just sneaking around, and the exploration is why I don't grind, because I do need new content. But this sort of brings me into Darktide. So you've got all of these ideas that you tried, Vermintide 1 and 2, and I think most people would agree that when it comes to like, dude, I've talked about this a million times, but to me, the good combat almost always means some kind of almost stall when you hit an enemy, where you feel the sword bite. And that's when you're like, boom, that works. So Vermintide comes out, I'm like, oh my God, hitting with the sound effects, I'm like hitting people with shield, everything feels like visceral. Dark Messiah Might and Magic might be one of the only ones I've ever really said, you know, I like that combat versus Vermintide. Yeah. But you jump into Darktide, and this is what confused me with Darktide. I've always thought of Darktide and Warhammer 40,000 as ranged weapons mostly. So I've seen, obviously, you guys, that's not exactly the way you guys are going, but what I'd like to know, was that a difficulty? Did you guys ever just think about doing ranged mostly, like a Back for Blood? Because Back for Blood would be considered the ranged version of like a Vermintide style game. How did that all come about, where you looked at Darktide and were like, okay, what are we gonna do?
There was never an option to sort of get rid of melee combat. That is our thing. Basically, that's our secret sauce. That's what we are best at. So there was never even a discussion if we wouldn't do like, let's get completely rid of melee.
Out control.
But that's like that's no chance. But and also like like most 40k units, they always have like a sword as well. So I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
it is there. It is definitely there. So it's not a stretch to imagine that you do use a lot of melee. So that was fine. But what we had to do was we realized, like even before we started, that if we're gonna do 40k, we have to put the same time and effort into our ranged combat as we do with our melee combat.
Yeah.
So we spent maybe 1.5 years purely on the ranged combat just to get it right.
What? Really?
Yeah.
Oh, damn. Damn.
Because like yeah, we had never really done ranged combat in that sense. Not in a like modern like Vermintide has ranged combat, but it is very, if you put that ranged combat in Call of Duty and it feels really ranged combat in Vermintide is there for like variation. It's there for certain circumstances, like there's a special, I bring up my crossbow and I snipe him and I kill him and stuff like that. I shoot like one shot, get rid of it, back to melee and go melee. Like they're like our bows I think are amazing, but still it's not like modern FPS, ADS, reloads, all that's like in Vermintide 1, we don't even have reloads. Like the reloads in Vermintide 1 is like this, you shoot, boom, and then it goes, and then it's
right.
We didn't have time to do reloads in Vermintide 1, so we didn't do them. That's not okay in like a modern FPS with like real like assault rifle type weapons. So we spent a lot of time really a lot of time working.
Yeah, no, and it pays off. I mean, the trailer, man, the gunplay looks fucking amazing.
I can sort of tell you that it is pretty fucking awesome.
Yeah, were there any like fundamental changes you had to make in terms of like level design or enemy design when it came to switching to that style of gameplay?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Vermintide has ranged enemies, but very few of them. I think we didn't even really have them apart from like the specials layer. Until we did Beastmen, and they came in with archers. But I mean, they're very rudimentary ranged enemies. They sort of stand and they shoot a bow and arrow on you, and like they don't do anything really. So the first thing we realized that was, I mean, that's also part of it. We needed to create enemies that worked with proper range combat. So we needed to create like a cover system for the enemies, so they take cover, they behave like ranged enemies do when you shoot at them. Like what do? They go behind cover, and they have like if you shoot close to them, they hide and stuff like that. All that like stuff that you take for granted in an FPS basically. We never really done that, so we had to create all of that. So yeah, it took us quite a while to get it, and yes, it has to change both level design. I mean, Vermintide, we never had to care about like covers and stuff like that. Here we have you have to think of both. We don't have a cover system for the player, but for the enemies, you have a cover system. So they need cover to sit behind, but you also need cover for the players, even though we don't have a cover system. Like there's no sort of button to sit behind the cover, but it's still, you can hide behind cover.
Yeah.
So we need to think about that as well. So yeah, it has changed quite a bit of both level design and game design and everything. Yeah.
So that feeds back to a question that I had written down right when I talked to you about doing this, which is, so the level design I've always felt in Vermintide. Okay, so that people understand, like Warhammer's old. I mean, it's like most people, not most, but a lot of people playing, any of these games weren't alive.
I think,
it's 83 for the original and 87.
And I think 40k 85, 87 or something. Yeah, I looked it up a couple of days ago.
Yeah, and the AI did as well, because I saw the AI question about this, which I'm going to ask you in a bit. So you look at this, right, and you see all this stuff. A lot of people don't know this world that's had, especially with Warhammer, they've had their bad years or decades. And now I would personally say we're in a really fine time. There's still some games that are a little lower quality, but Warhammer's definitely coming up where you're just like, man, Space Marine got announced, Space Marine 2, which I got to tell you, that's like 2 birthdays in the same year for me to hear about space. I'm just like, what the hell is going on? We're getting all this cool stuff. But when I'm a huge fan of Warhammer fantasy roleplay, as well as, and Vermintide's look and the like stooped buildings and everything looking like you're just going to get tetanus if you fall down. Like it all looks nasty. So then you go into the future and you guys are in a hive city. When it comes to level designers, which is good that you're one of the people that did, how do you make it look as varied? Here's one of the issues I've noticed in other sci-fi games is that once they go future sci-fi too far, there's a loss of like atmosphere. And I think Warhammer maybe helps that just because it's Warhammer. But did you guys ever notice when you come out of your amazing like forest levels and all this crazy crap from Vermintide, and then you're like, okay, pipes and steam. How did you guys make sure that those are like visually impactful to where people are visually still attracted to going to this point? Because I got to tell you, Vermintide, that's the best part about Vermintide 1 and 2. There would be a point I would see, and I would be like, and I didn't know if it went anywhere, but it looked cool. And that to me is like, I know I might not be the same as Abssii, who's maybe wanting loot. I'm not that way. I'm like, that building looks awesome, and I want to go there.
Gotta get all the tomes, all the grimoires.
Oh, dude, don't talk about the tomes. If anybody, that triggers me. How did you guys make that transition? Was there difficulties, or were you ready? Was it time to do this? And maybe it was easy?
It has been a hell of a lot harder than in Vermintide. Making missions has taken a lot longer than it did in Vermintide. Okay. In Vermintide, it was easy. I mean, one part is 50% of the screen in Vermintide was the sky, pretty much. So you didn't have to do anything there. Here we have 360 degrees is something, so we have to build everything.
True.
Right.
You are never really truly outside in this game. So like the Hive City is the size of United States.
Yeah.
So it's pretty fucking big.
They're awesome, by the way.
So that was, and so we lost that part of it, like that trick. We like the classic sort of. If you can see the mountain over there, you can
go there. Yeah.
Oh God, Skyrim. Thanks, Todd.
Anymore. So I think one way the way we have to do it is just sort of much more work, much more lighting. Lighting has a much bigger role. It is much more important to have really good lighting, and lighting has been a real challenge because you're supposed to be inside all the time, and it's supposed to be dark and gritty, but you still want to see stuff.
Yeah.
So it's supposed to be dark, but you can't really be dark. So you have to get that sort of in between where it looks dark, but it's actually kind of bright. That was really hard. Took us about a year, 2 years to get right.
Damn.
Stuff like that. So yeah, and like lighting has been in Vermintide. We like the level artist just did the lighting. We had one guy that sort of was a little bit more specialized in lighting, but he also did all the level arting and stuff like that. But now he's transitioned into full-time lighting, and we have another lighting artist. So, and we're actually looking for a third one. So it's a much bigger problem, and or not a problem, but like a thing that needs to be done, and needs to be done well, and it's much more difficult and harder to do.
It also, I would assume, hits your fill rate a little bit on cards, and because you're drawing, you're drawing stuff, not the sky.
Hell of a lot. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. Oh damn. Have you had to rewrite? Same engine, right? Is this correct to say this is the same?
It's the same engine, but the code base is completely rewritten. So everything is new, but it's based in the same engine. It's still our own Stingray engine that we developed from the start, but it's a new. I mean, it's not the same engine, but since it's our own engine. It's not like it's Stingray 2. Like it doesn't. It's just a new version of the engine. So but a lot of the stuff has changed. Like the occlusion system is different. Much of the like lighting systems and stuff like that is completely new. The classic sort of engine coder thing happened a few weeks ago. I mean, we were working on performance and stuff now, so and like optimization and stuff like that. So, and all of a sudden, he found one line of code that added 1.5 gigs of memory on every mission. And he was like, we were like, what?
Yeah.
We were like picking out the units and trying to get the memory down, and he was like, yeah, I found this one line here. Boop. Oh, it's 1.5 gigs. We were like, what the?
Wow.
That's a classic sort of. We usually joke about that, like early on in development, that like somebody should add the line where you can just remove it later on and everything starts
and get
working.
Performance.
Exactly, and there actually was one of those lines in the game this time, so that was pretty awesome. That was a good day.
I was talking to the developers for because I love doing the walking the walk videos, and I got to do Valhalla. And there's so many things that they do. And one of the new ones, maybe not new, but one of the ones they've done certainly in the last 3, which is your open world ones, is they do an AI style Q&A, not replacing the Q. I want to make sure everybody knows they're not replacing QA. But what they do is something I found ingenious, which is they leave for the night, and they actually have the computer teleport Eivor 15 meters around the game world.
We have that as well.
You do? Okay, dude, this is so... Am I just so slow and you guys all have this, or...
Nah, I guess we didn't have it on Vermintide, so it's new for us. But in Darktide, we have 4 or 5 computers that's playing the game all the time. The computer, they load everything, they compile everything, and it just spits out error messages. But it also actually plays the missions and stuff like that. So it walks through the missions, yeah.
Is that also in some rudimentary way, or maybe the actual way, that you handle AI coworkers, not coworkers, AI players? So is that data then?
The bots?
Yeah, does that create the brain of the bots in some way? Obviously, they need to be dumber.
No.
Is there a reason why you can say it doesn't?
I think I'm not sure. I don't know exactly how the Testify system works in detail, but I think that is much simpler, and it just sort of teleports around or stuff like that. I don't know. It cheats in all kinds of ways.
Yeah, of course. That's the only way to do it, right? Humans will always beat, or at least for a long time, unless it's accuracy, right? Will always, I mean, accuracy, I've played Arma before and been shot 800 yards away by some dude with an M4. And you're just like, what's happening? Because you can crank that AI. But when I like your guys' stuff, and I've always felt, I really like the bots in Vermintide. Sometimes I don't. Back 4 Blood originally came out and had a grotesque number of things I didn't like. And they have patched that thing to bliss. And I think that goes back to your conversation about patching and DLC, and where you're like, okay, this didn't work. What if we change one thing? And I know a lot of gamers, and I will definitely ding a game if it's buggy on day one.
Yeah.
But I do believe that there's something magically, insanely... Imagine if you were a book author, and you wrote a book, and somebody said, page 76 is stupid. And you were able to go and look at page 76 and say, oh, yeah, man, that's poorly written, right? And that's the one thing, a rapper, they do a rap and they're like, this one song, 13, I'm not a fan of it. But let's change some stuff up, and now 13 has been patched. And I know nobody wants that, but what I'm saying is, when things just don't work, because you guys can't prepare for 100,000 players, nobody can. No, that's not the way the world works. So I love the way you guys have set stuff up. Was it Winds of Magic? Winds of Magic is the other DLC you guys did, right? Am I getting that name right?
Yeah, one of them, yeah.
One of them. And you guys have always been really open about, hey, this worked, this didn't work. When it comes to Darktide, Psychers, so we're looking at these classes, so people know you got the Zealot, and I'm reading this right, it says an inquisitorial acolyte type with a bowl cut, obviously, a power hammer and a scroll down their front. The veteran, an Imperial Guard stormtrooper with a gas mask and lays gun. The Ogryn,
they're customizable, so you can make them look.
You can make your own character.
And we will get to the customization. So yes, I should state this is what some people saw in previews and in video. The Ogryn toting a massive slug gun and a cutlass, that's an awesome mix. And the Psyker, a hooded warp-powered Psyker who needs no equipment. Their mind is a weapon. Here's my question. Let's talk about customization. I pick the Psyker. Am I changing the color of my magic if I'm customizing, or is it the look of my guy?
It's the look of your guy.
Look of your guy.
Magic.
Okay. And
look at the guy.
So when you look at the Psyker, I certainly don't want to. So if I ask a question you can't answer it, we can always cut it too. But do they have like a ESP up close weapon?
I mean, the Psychers will have a breadth of weapons, and they will have even non-magical weapons as well. Since like I mean, in Vermintide, we were limited to what weapons each character could have because they were an elf and a dwarf and a human and stuff like that. So an elf doesn't use other weapons than elf weapons, and same thing with dwarfs and stuff like that. But since now we're, at least apart from the Ogryn, the 3 other classes are all human, so they could all use human weapons. So they will be sharing some weapons in between the different classes. Ogryn has its own kit because his kit is like twice the size.
Twice the size, right?
Huge.
So yeah, he's gigantic. But the other ones can share some weapons. They don't share. Everybody has their own sort of like identity weapons that are like only for them, but at the same time, some of them where it makes sense they can share. So you will definitely see Psychers that are not wielding like a force staff or something like that, and maybe it has a pistol or something like that instead. So that's going to be really interesting and cool. But they do have, like, every class has their own abilities and their own grenade loadout, so that's unique per class. So on the side, if you've seen our footage that we've shown, the sort of head popping that the Psyker does,
Yeah,
where it
yeah,
goes,
yeah.
and it pops the head. That's actually the grenade ability for that Psyker. So
that's like the boys, man. The one lady and the boys can just pop people's heads. That's sweet. That's a sweet move.
One of my favorite things in Vermintide was like the banter between the characters, and obviously they're like pre-done characters. So other than, you know, cosmetic changes, obviously, do you think the ability to customize your character, has it had any other fundamental changes to the game?
Yeah, I mean, so you can completely decide how you want to look. We have a full customization system where you can like select face, hair, scars, tattoos, skin color, gender, stuff like that. And then we also have like, you get to decide your backstory. So it's more like narrative fluff.
Oh, very nice.
It's not super important, or it doesn't like have any gameplay.
Yeah,
effect.
right.
But if you want to be a veteran that comes from Cadia and you grew up,
I'm guessing that changes their voice.
No, actually not. But it does change some of the cosmetic options. So maybe
interesting.
there's a scar that you can only have if you're from Cadia, or
right,
nice, stuff like that. But then the last option is to select your personality, and your personality is your voice option.
Yeah,
so each class has 3 different personalities, and each of those personalities is pretty much the same as one of the characters in Vermintide. So
gotcha.
Each class actually has, and since you can be male and female, there's actually 6 different options per class. So there's 3 male veterans, and there's 3 female veterans, and then 3 zealots, and so forth and so forth. So there's fuck ton of voiceover. And the cool thing is with this system, and it's not just sort of a different actor doing the same lines, it's completely different lines. So it's a different
right. So it's not like tense versus action. It's just totally a different thing.
It's not just that same
completely
different person saying the exact same
right
thing. So you can have a group of 4 veterans, everybody's playing the same class, but they've chosen different personalities, and they will have conversations. So, so that's the cool thing. And so like the amount of like narrative and VO to find in this game is insane, mind-boggling, because it's like the combination is like so much more than we had in Vermintide. In Vermintide we had 5 characters, and you always picked 4 of them. So one was like sure, and that was insane as well. Like there were so many things that could happen depending if you played this mission with this setup, and like this thing happened, they would have this conversation. But now it's like that, but with 4 classes times 6 different personalities. Well, only 3 for the organ, so it's times whatever. Blah, blah. I don't know. We have a hell of a lot of VO.
A lot.
and another cool thing is that like as you level up, as you rank up in the Inquisition, the VO will also change. So you will start having other different lines that you
thank God. No more Skyrim. Somebody stole your sweet roll. You're level 60. You've killed 3, and they're like, you can't go in. And you're like, dude, I'm wearing the skin of your mom. Like, that's you wouldn't really cool. Backtalk me.
Like they mature as you level up in the game and gain more experience.
Very cool.
That's
awesome.
Our VO system is insane, and the amount of lines is insane, and like it's it's gonna take you a hell of a long time until you've heard everything that you can.
Yeah, I mean, really cool. People, you know, as what is it? Back for Blood? What's the one that started all this?
Left 4 Dead.
Thank you. Yeah. A game that just escaped me. I never really dived into that as much. But when you see all these and they've all got their little claim to fame and all this kind of stuff, one of the things I like about, and this is not a shortcut, I want to make sure people are listening, but when I look at Warhammer, in a way, Warhammer, as long as Games Workshop is cool, Warhammer works for itself in many ways. As long as you're pretty, I would say reflective of the fiction itself, and especially as somebody myself, I have no issue if they slightly change something, as long as the dwarf isn't there, riding a dragon, where you're just like, what's happening? Like, this is nothing like it. But I've always felt each one has their little place, and it's so funny to me that I know far less people who know that Games Workshop and Warhammer is a thing, but they know Vermintide's combat is a thing. You guys stepped up past the fiction in Vermintide, which I found interesting because a lot of times it's the fiction and then people are just happy to be there. What I found with Vermintide is I was happy to be there, and as a fan of the fiction, that works for me, but it doesn't need to be. And so when you jump into Darktide, And I've talked to you about this before a little bit on Vermintide. So working with Games Workshop and stuff, and you look at these weapons, you brought it up when you're talking about the Ogrins. So they're whatever size bigger than a human. When you
like
do
twice.
like twice, when you do these kind of things, do you and I know you were saying you do a particular thing, and so some other people might do this. How do you figure out like what gun does what damage? Do you track the tabletop at all? Do they come and tell you, hey, this gun can't do this? Like, how does all that come about?
There's definitely a discussion about what gun can do what, but we have it partly with Games Workshop, but we have it mostly with our internally.
Oh, okay,
because
gotcha.
Everybody at Fatshark are insane Warhammer fanatics. So and especially the combat designer Mats, he's been into Warhammer forever, so he knows that a last gun cannot do X, Y, and Z. It has to be like this, and an auto gun is this, and a stab rifle is this, and whatever. He knows. So we're our harshest critic is ourselves. But then of course we have a discussion with Games Workshop as well. And sometimes we have to go a little bit outside of the lore, or at least not outside of the lore, but we have to interpret the lore to make sense in a game. An example is that our last guns actually have a hollow sight on them. And the reason is that the last gun is created to be a really tiny little plastic weapon that is this big. And it is not designed very well to be in down sight, basically. So the sight on the last gun is horrible. So we try to get it working like with how it looks on the model, but it just, you can't aim with that thing. So we had to put a hollow sight on it. So is like, for some it's that very, but it was just like, we have to do this. We can't make a game where you can't see what you're shooting, so we have to do something about it. So I think that is a little bit sort of some people might say like, oh, that's not okay, but we have to do what we have to do. We made the hollow sights look like they're like church windows, so at least it feels 40k.
Yeah 40k, man. They love their church spaceships, right? They're like, dude, here we come in our cathedral spaceship to kick the shit out of everybody. Do you have a question, Abssii, while I'm gonna grab the Discord questions while you're
I was just asking about weapons. Did you guys also have to balance out like different weapons having different recoil or spray and stuff like that?
Yeah, they're all super unique and different, and definitely they're almost to a fault actually, where it becomes hard to itemize them because they're all so unique, so they're hard to compare. Because Mats loves to make stuff unique, and he's very much sort of gameplay first, so it makes them hard, because it's like, this weapon might do a hell of a lot of damage, but it's slower and it hits in a way that's different. But this weapon is fast, and so if you look at the stats, it looks like this is much worse than this, but they're exactly the same because of reasons and stuff like that. So it makes them really hard for us to itemize and then compare and make a good comparison. But yeah, the matrix of how the different damage types and different swings and different whatnots is I don't even dare looking at it, because I don't understand how it works.
It's honestly good to hear though. I'm a huge fan of learning each gun's different recoil pattern.
They are very different and very unique, and very sort of, everything has its own use. And the idea is to have our goal is that you don't want to have a group with one setup. You want to have a group with a very diverse setup of different things, and you want to, even as yourself, you want to have maybe your ranged weapon is this, and then your melee weapon complements it, or just sort of is good at something else, so you have both options. But at the same time, we make sure that each class isn't like jack of all trades, so they can handle any situation. Right. We want to make sure that we want to promote different compositions and stuff like that. So yeah,
it's true too, because other than Inquisitors, and some very specific characters, it is a mulch factory. I mean, if you've ever played Warhammer, people are dying 24/7. Like it is. So the jack of all trades is always cool. It sounds cool. But then most of the time you'll see in Warhammer games, especially, where if somebody does have a jack of all trades and they get in the wrong position, the person who's specific for that will just absolutely destroy them. So the idea of this all sort of works together. I got some questions here. Garrick asks, what do you think is a good goal for future story and future character classes, if you ever did any? for this? Maybe
for Darktide.
For Darktide, maybe any future classes you would like to do, or if you don't want to talk about that future story.
I don't know if I can say because I already know we will do future classes.
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
And the story as well, and we're much more prepared this time.
Yeah, like you said,
to do a sort of coherent story. It's already there from the get-go, where we want to go and what we want to do. So hopefully we managed to do a more sort of coherent and more sort of
a plot story that sort of goes along without as many gaps. Okay, go ahead, Abby.
Yeah, about that, like you obviously learned a lot from Vermintide, and you know, one of the cool things now, the internet, is that you know there's the community that's vocal. Yeah. Is there anything you would say you learned from the community in Vermintide or in-house feedback that you ended up like pushing into Darktide?
I don't know if I can pinpoint anything. Like everything is like that.
Probably
constantly. It's I don't know if I can think of something that is like specific, but it happens all the time. I mean, we are constantly looking at what the community says, and like we are updating and doing stuff, and we have learned so much from doing Vermintide 1 to what we know now, and what we know works and doesn't work, and what we know becomes problematic or whatever. So yeah, definitely. But I don't know if I can think of something very specific that could.
Other than, I think you did a little bit, even though it was because of the engine, the story. I do know a lot of people I talked to who were like, the narrative's a little patchy, you know, and for some people that does matter. So the idea that you're able to do that means the people who do like a story, like myself, who maybe want to play it through with different characters, that is one thing that you guys have definitely been able to, you know, for whatever reason, it's something that you guys know is important.
I mean, but we have a difficult job telling a traditional story because we can't really, because it is multiplayer and you're always playing missions. We don't know what missions you're going to play in what order. We don't want to force you into like a single player campaign before you get to play online with your buddies. So like as soon as you leave the prologue and the tutorial, and we know like, okay, you know which buttons to press, you are allowed to do whatever you want and go play with whoever you want. So we can't tell a story where it's like you're supposed to play this mission and then meet this mission and this mission and this mission. So we tell a story in a sort of we have all these story pieces here. We throw them out and you pick them up in whatever order you like. And hopefully after you pick them all up, it starts to make sense and you start to sort of see a story. Something different in Darktide though, is that we have actually one thing that we do know about the player is that they are going to level up. That's a straight line. So we do tell a story of your sort of journey as you level up in
that's
position.
Cool.
Yeah.
So that's a story that we can tell. That is a straight line or a straight narrative. But other than that, the way we tell story is just bits and pieces while you play missions. It's the conversations between the characters, and it's the different missions that have different stories within themselves. But we don't know which order you do them in, so we can't tell like a traditional story. But we will. But since we know this now, we can have that as sort of our starting point. We know we can't tell you a traditional. We're not even trying. So we're doing it like bits and pieces, and the more you know, and then after a while you started to understand the whole narrative and what's going on in this sort of story.
I do like the idea of the vocal work changing as you go up in power, because that does tell its own story.
That's
so like
insane.
So, and that's even cooler because somebody could, if they wanted, play the same levels a couple times, not even really get the overcloud story, the larger story, but they realize they're more powerful, which for a lot of gamers, I mean, I'm not quite sure, but I certainly don't. I mean, this is something I ding on in most reviews when it comes to this. I can't remember a game that does change your voice work much as you go up in level. Like, I legitimately can't. So the idea that you even have that is cool, and then backed up by the typical gameplay. I think the organic storytelling that you're talking about, mixed with that kind of, you know, and then, of course, new classes later on, yeah, it just sort of makes sense to me is probably the best way to tell that story. It'd be really difficult to be like, you need to go here, you need to go to the boiler room. And people are like, I don't want to go to the boiler room. That comes up. There's a question about this, which I don't think I had an issue with this, but I see what they were talking about. How's the tutorial? I guess they're asking about, I'd ask if they've given any attention this time to tutorial training modes. One of the genres shortcoming is always at explaining their abilities and preparing players for higher difficulty.
Yeah, I can definitely take that criticism. We have been really bad at sort of telling our players about all the different mechanics and stuff. I've even seen, I was demoing Winds of Magic actually at a conference in the UK. And a group of players came in, and they were like high-level players that played like the highest difficulties, and there was mechanics that they did not know.
But, dude, like, that happens to me.
Yeah. So even like players that had played a long time and were good at the game, there was things that they had completely missed. So yes, we are putting a hell of a lot more effort into our both prologue and tutorial this time, where to try at least to tell you about all the different mechanics in the game. And hopefully we do a better job. And I'm fairly certain that we will do at least a better job. If it's perfect, I don't know, but it's a hell of a better than.
I'm a fan of that, honestly. Just diving headfirst into new mechanics I have no idea about, just like coming out of nowhere.
Yeah, and I mean,
there's something to be said for that, but not everything.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's also like a give and take there. We don't want to hold you. We don't want to keep you from doing what the game is supposed to do, when that is playing online with your buddies. So we want you to get there as fast as we can get you there. So yeah, we do as little of it as we think is needed, but yeah, I hope we've done a better job this time. But only time will tell.
Mech Warrior that came out, or was this BattleTech? Came out a couple years, maybe 2 years. No, it was Mech Warrior. It came out about 2 years ago. It had a co-op. It had co-op ability, but it took 2 hours of gameplay to get there. And I got to tell you, man, talk about a way to make people mad. I mean, wow. Like it was, and their reasoning was so sound, and I'm sure internally it sounded sound. Like somebody brought it up. They were like, well, guys, we have a lot of mechanics, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of times if you get 4 people to play a game, they don't want to waste time with you learning how to shoot shit. Like they don't want to wait for you to learn something. So when you jump into a game, I mean, how many times have we played where, like, you know, remember you and I, Abssii, played with Sleeve, and we were playing like State of Decay, and I was mad at you because you couldn't figure out a button.
Can you join yet?
Yeah, because you're like, I played a bunch, and then you were like, how do I grab this? And I'm like, dude, you said, but then it dawns on you that, yeah, it's easy to miss that if that's not your gameplay style. You may not know that mechanic. So the idea of having even, I think a good thing is just the hot pops too, that come up in levels. Those always help, where it's like, you know, did you know? You know, and what sucks is I was talking to another developer who has no loads in their game. And they were saying that one of their problems was no loads. They were like, oh, crap. How do we tell somebody something because there's no loading in this game?
No tips.
There's no loading tips.
There's no, and have you ever got an old game and put it on an SSD and it's like, did you know? And you're like, I don't know anything.
Worst thing about the NVMe is I don't have time to read, especially, you know, sometimes on loading screens. They put like important story paragraphs.
Yes.
I'm like, so boom, it's done, you know? So.
Yeah. And you're like, I got to take a video of this and slow it down. So that's cool to hear about the tutorials. You know, I don't remember it being too much of an issue, but Liam asks you, what are you cooking these days? This is your coworker.
That's Liam that used to work at
Fatshark. Used to work. Yeah, I got to meet him. Great guy.
I don't know, nothing really special. I'm still into ramen, but I haven't done too much of that lately. Today I cooked saltimbocca for my family. It's like thinly sliced veal with farm ham, and you do it in like a wine and what's it called, veal. It's a really nice sauce, and then I did like a cacio e pepe type of pasta to it with sage.
I had a slice of cheese.
I'm fasting still, you know.
Let's see. What are these? I love that Raphael, when somebody said, what's the secret of life? Raphael's just like 42. So you always get weird questions. And then going back to the questions, I did get one. This, let me check for the Discord here.
Yes, by the way, I would have answered the same thing. So
it's
obvious.
This is Heretical Shark, by the way. He's a Warhammer fan. You can tell by the name.
Okay.
I've talked to this guy he's been a patron for years. He says, where are any of the other Chaos Gods and factions considered, or are they considered in Darktide? Of course, with all the religion and stuff. Or was it always the plan from the beginning to be Nurgle?
I think very early on we decided upon Nurgle. I think we had some discussions very, very early on, but I think it's been Nurgle for at least the whole of like true production. It's been Nurgle.
I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but what about Slaanesh? Sure, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. what is that? The
Slanish or
yeah, the god of pleasure and like and kink, as I call it, the weirdo god. Did you guys choose Nurgle because it just fit with the way you wanted to play?
I think the reason we went with Nurgle was probably Poxwalkers, because we wanted some kind of horde enemy. And we didn't want to go Gene Stealer. We didn't want to go. What's it called?
Tyrannid or whatever they're called.
Tyrannids. Yeah. So yeah, that was probably the reason we went Nurgle, and also we just like Nurgle in general. So yeah.
Nurgle's one of the gods.
And also, I think we liked Traitor Guard because they're sort of a mirror of the player. They are also like human military, so it has this nice mirror aspect of it. So that's one reason.
I think, especially when you look at the gods, Nurgle does also work just because mutations and stuff. There's all kinds of crazy stuff. Yeah. We talked about this in Vermintide's day. About lizardmen and all this, because I was always querying you, always trying to get you to give me a leak on what your next one is. When you guys were ramping down Vermintide, or maybe not ramping down, but really deciding on this next one, was Darktide instantly was Darktide it?
Yeah, Darktide was it even before we were done with Vermintide. Like I think even before we started doing Vermintide 2, we had and Anders and some other people had talked about, wouldn't it be cool to do a 40k version of this? I think we talked about it as far back as when we were doing Vermintide 1. Like while developing Vermintide 1, like one day we should do a 40k version of this. This would be awesome. So yeah, it was a given.
When you look at like the people that you've been there for a while, and you look at all these people who have been, especially with Fatshark, do you find that it's difficult sometimes to where you guys? I was talking to somebody at Ubisoft. They change developers for Assassin's Creed about every 4 years. They did every 3 years, and they did a good job by like sort of saying, here's your game 3 years. Now you got 3 or 4 years. Just go off and do your own thing. With Darktide and Vermintide, how about this? Have you just noticed people are fired up because it's different? Because it's not, I mean, not that Vermintide is boring, but have you noticed like an internal energy a little bit? Because it's like, this is something, brand new. Does that help you guys out?
I mean, after 2 Vermintide games, people were happy for a change of setting and just doing something else. Like definitely like the environment artist guys were just happy to do something different than trees and stones and whatnot. It's like doing something completely different. I think the weapon guys as well were really happy doing that. Yeah, I think most of us were really happy. But at the same time, I don't think like there's still been a team that's worked on Vermintide.
Yeah, right.
Still, so and it's not like they're sad to be on Vermintide or anything like that. So I mean both yes and no. Yeah, definitely. Of course, it's fun to do something different after 6 years of doing the same thing. It's nice for a change of pace. But I mean, Darktide is very much in every aspect a spiritual successor to Vermintide. So it felt very sort of at home and sort of just kept going, sort
of. Abssii, did you have one? I'm gonna grab mine.
A question?
Yeah.
So there was So one of my favorite things in Vermintide, which I think maybe KARAK hates that about me, but I love. So not only like obviously the risk versus reward of the grimoire and having tomes in your inventory, I love that for sure. But I also really, before everyone knows where everything is, I really enjoy the exploration. I like the first person kind of platforming and going to places that are weird to try to find something like a grimoire. So do you guys have any changes you did to that for Darktide, or is it kind of more of the same?
We still have a tome and grimoire system, but it is changed. We've changed it to be so one of the big change in Darktide is that we have a different way of how you select missions, and one part of that is that a mission can now have a side objective, and it can also not have a side objective. And one of the side objectives, or two of the side objectives it can have, is one is tomes and one is grimoires. And the reason to sort of remove it from the base layer of a mission is that after a while, the tomes and the grimoires created a they created sort of, it became what's the word, like a silver path, or like the one true path through the missions.
I agree.
You had to go via the tome and via the grimoire to go to the end to get max points, and that after a while, we feel that it sort of ruins part of it, but the exploration part and the sort of it becomes very samey. So we've sort of detached them, but we still really like the system of like the risk reward thing of it. But now it's an option, so you can decide if you want to do a Miso Karak. You can like say fuck tomes.
It's never happening in my game.
So you can just go with missions that doesn't have tomes and doesn't have grimoires. And you don't have to care about them, or you pick one with tomes and grimoires in it. And also, I think another reason for it was that it will become like a handshake between the players while matchmaking, that you have selected a mission with a grimoire, so you're up for doing a grimoire, which could be a problem in Vermintide as well, where like one person wanted to get the grim and the other one didn't want to get mad. Exactly. So that's another reason for it. So yeah. But at the same time, I mean, we really like the grimoire system. There's a funny story about the grimoire system. When we did, I guess did we have it in Vermintide 1? I think we did, right?
I think you did.
We did. Yeah, we did. Yeah. But we had like super ambitious side objective ideas where every mission was supposed to have like unique side objectives that you could do, and then like, due to development realities, we had to cut that. So we just ended up with these, what we thought was super boring, 2 books that you could find in the mission. But we were like, this is like the worst idea ever. Like we had like long meetings discussing like how people are going to hate this. It's such a bad idea. It's so boring. It's just 2 books. And now it's like this staple of our games that you have really to have a tome and a grimoire. And but then and I mean, when we started playtesting it, we also realized that this is actually works really good. Like it's a perfect, but knowing like as a dev, like knowing the ambition of the other things we wanted to do, it felt like the worst idea ever. But then it turned out to be probably one of our best ideas. So you never know. Yeah.
And do you guys have like? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's the only time that Silver and I've ever really been. I shot Silver in the butt in Arma and he didn't get mad. But the one time he got mad at me, we've known each other for years, was the time he was like, there's a grimoire over here, and he kept saying it. And I finally was like, shut the up about the grimoire. And because he never would be like, can we go get this? It's like, there's one over here. And I was like, dude, I don't need an extra vocal radar. I know it's there. I don't want to do. But it was because I was one of the few. Everybody else that I know, that was the thing for them. And I don't know why I didn't like. I mean, I'm not even going to say why I knew.
This is the exact reason why now it's optional.
Yeah.
That's a really good change.
So you don't pick the missions with grimoire, so you don't have to care about it. We made it for you.
Or I'll be by myself and nobody will want to play. What are we going to ask, Abssii? People will be like, I ain't playing with that dude.
Yeah, like something also that lends to this is, do you guys have plans for like other types of like kind of rewarding exploration or going off the beaten path in some
good question.
certain ways, or platforming? You know, I like KZ and Counter-Strike, so
yeah, but definitely. I mean, there's and the cool thing also with this side objective system is that we will be able to much easily add new side objectives, and that's a difference. Like when we did Vermintide, how we built the missions, they were sort of, this is how the mission is, and now we've built a bunch of systems where we can add stuff and put them in layers. So we will be able to create, through the lifespan of the game, new side objectives that lets you explore and do new stuff and stuff like that. So yeah, that's going to be super cool and super interesting. Yeah.
As one of the main person on levels, do you find that a character like the Ogrim, as you can tell, I'm stuck on him because I love the idea of this giant character that even takes up more geometry. Fantastic. How do you play test for this dude getting in your way? Number one. Number two, is there friendly fire? Which I'm assuming there is, because I'm going to shoot that dude in the ass 8,000 times. I can already tell. It's just the way I play. I'm going to shoot my own guys. How do you go about play testing? I know the game plays, but I'm sure you guys do. How do you go about play testing friendly fire, no friendly fire? How big is this dude? Is he too big? How does that affect your pathing? For example, your nav meshes, if that's what you're using, how do you get this guy to not get caught up in a door, which I wasn't aware until the Twitter thread, that doors are one of the most difficult things to do in games. So how does all that come about?
First, we had a lot of discussions about the size of him because he is twice the size of everybody else. It was like a year of trying to figure out the right size. And the problem was the doors, actually, because we had to make doors that he could fit through, but they turned out looking gigantic for everybody else, so that was a problem. So we had to find like the right size where he sort of barely fits in and the doors still look normal. So that was a problem. Right now the game does not have friendly fire, actually. It might be, the verdict is still out on that, but it would probably be a difficulty setting type thing.
Understood.
So on the lower difficulties, it shouldn't, I'm pretty sure we won't have it. I'm not sure about the higher difficulties yet. Right now it doesn't have it, but we'll see when we release the game how we end up on that. But the Ogre, I can tell you, he is always in your line of sight. Always. He's gigantic.
Just a caboose,
that's a bit of a
man.
Problem, but it's just he's a caboose.
I'm guessing he's the tank for sure.
But I mean, one thing we just have to make sure that somebody's always playing Ogre basically when we're playtesting, and we're playtesting pretty much every day. So we do a lot of testing. So
the reason,
but he's big as hell, and you can be 4 Ogres, and that's
I know that's so. I was going to mention 2 things. The reason why I mentioned size is because my favorite part about Vermintide is that when you're Barden, right, Dwarf?
Yeah.
You're staring at everybody's nuts through the entire game, which got to be just a shitty way to live. Then you go through the wheat fields, you can't see stuff. So I was leaping to try to see, and I'd be like, where are you? And I love that. To me, that was the greatest thing in the world, because I was like, that's Lord of the Rings. We even see it with Gimli and, you know, loft me or pick me up. I need to see. I love that. Yeah. And so the idea of 4 of these guys, and I always talk about this, for example, like when Halo's local split screen, they were like, oh, we're not doing this. One of the things a lot of gamers don't understand is, like, one person throws a grenade, the developer has to identify how much is the max that we can draw on the screen. Then you get 2 people both doing it. Then you get 3 people, right? So with the Ogrim, how has that, have you ever done, you said you guys have had that. Have you personally played a level where you were all 4 an Ogrim, you personally? Or have you watched somebody do it? And like, is it anarchy? How do you guys, that probably explains why there's no friendly fire too, because splash damage is probably a big thing in your game.
Yeah, and also the melee combat with we usually don't, like, even in Vermintide we don't actually have friendly fire in melee, because melee, we don't want to, I mean, the game is about staying together and as a team.
Heroes don't hit each other, Victor.
No, exactly. and with the melee, it's impossible to hit each other.
Imagine your crowd controlling with a massive hammer and just swinging on your friends.
Dude.
We had friendly fire in the melee in Vermintide 1 in the start, and it was just not fun at all.
Yeah.
So we got rid of that quick. I don't think I've ever played full Ogre, but I know people have. I don't think I've done it, actually. I usually play as a sellout because I really like, I say her, but it could be him, ability, which is like a dash, and I really like to play very aggressive. So it's the same in Vermintide. I also play a lot of Carillion because I like dashing around and I like being super aggressive and like really quick. So I tend to play the sellout mostly. I'm way too aggressive to play the Psyker because I just kill myself all the time.
Oh, gotcha.
Dude, sorry, no, go ahead.
No, go.
I have ADHD when it comes to playing classes. I like to play all different types of classes, from like tank to. So I'm guessing I have to make different characters for each class, right? And level each one. Okay, that's cool. So it's not like a mix and match type thing where you change on one character, because they fundamentally look different as well, right?
Yeah, I think they're all separate slots.
Yeah, exactly. It's more of a this time around. It's more of a I create this character and it is this character type of thing, like in an MMO or something like that.
Yeah, I like that because that's how we grew up, like with WoW and everything. Like you make a character for a class, and I feel like games have tended to go away from that.
The jack of all trades thing again works in some role playing, but in fiction, for example, in Warhammer, there are some characters even in the novels, because I know Dan Abbott's helping you guys, right? Yeah. He's working with you. He's got some pretty powerful characters, but they can be beaten mentally by somebody who's smarter than them. So there's always sort of this caveat. But I know in some, having a military guy who's jack of all trades, like Commando or Rambo, makes sense. But in this kind of stuff, the idea that you can hold your own, maybe, but that's different than like destroying everybody and being, what we see in a lot of games where if somebody, goes in. And I forgot to ask this. So difficulties. And this might be too soon, but so difficulties, ignoring the friendly fire. What do you think? What are some good ideas for difficulty for you? Because one of the things I've found with a lot of games is that they don't change up the AI's movement too much between difficulties. Halo did, but Halo, I think there's a reason why there's 1,000 videos on how good Halo's AI is very unique, right? How do you guys handle, or how would you want to handle difficulties, like a newbie, and then somebody says, I want to play veteran. Is it damage? Is it damage and special moves? The ability maybe to do more of a special move?
It's we have a bunch of things, but something that we don't want to do is just make the enemies like
soak.
Sponges, sponges.
Awesome.
We don't do that very much. I mean, they get more HP and they do more damage, yes, but not to a insane extent.
Yeah.
Like it's not like 10 times or something like that. It's like maybe twice or something like that. So they are more dangerous. Like getting hit is more dangerous. But what we mainly do, I would argue, is the composition of the enemies that you meet. Since the game is AI, since it's an AI director, you will just meet more difficult compositions of enemies.
Great.
That's the main difficulty.
That is amazing.
Because like in the game, we have enemies that are like force multipliers. If you meet them alone, they're not hard at all. Like the Mauler. But I'm really bad at the actual names because I've only had the like dev names for 3 years now, and now we're finally sort of getting real. He is actually called the. Is it the Mauler? Maybe. Anyway, you've seen him in the videos. The guy with the big two-handed axe and fully like armored. If you meet him yourself, you just dodge his attacks and you kill him. It's not a problem. But him with like 5 poxwalkers or 5 anything else is a real fucking problem, because your swings stop at him, and so you can't can't do your sort of melee control and stuff like that.
Awesome.
So that's how we handle making the game more difficult. Like, and there's also enemy types that actually don't even show up on the lower difficulties.
Oh man, thank you.
They come on the higher ones.
See, that's the way to reward a player too.
Yeah.
Because some players don't want to get better, but when you find out that there might be, like these characters that are only going to come out for strong heroes, that's the way fiction works anyway. Like the low podunk guy, no villain is gonna come kill him. But once you start doing better, the idea makes sense to have those.
It's way more interesting than just have it be like a gate of area. You know what I mean? Yeah.
But and then we also allow them to do faster sort of
attacks, maybe.
Attacks or like cycles of attacks and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
So that they do become more aggressive and do more aggressive things. But in Darktide we actually have a difficulty setting, but then we also have something else that's called circumstances, and one of the circumstances that you could have is higher and lower population. So you could have more enemies. So you can have you could play on a 1 difficulty, but with a hell of a lot of enemies. So they're pretty easy enemies, but there's a hell of a lot of them. So that becomes one thing. And you could also play on a high difficulty with really tough enemies and hard enemies, but not that many of them. So you could really sort of fine tune
dial it in
what you want to, what your experience is that you're after.
I forgot to ask you how long you have. Are you good for time?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Because I wanted to ask you also, moving on just for a second, about music and the writing. So we know Dan's there, and then I think it's Jesper Kidd, right? Doing your audio? Is that okay?
Yeah.
So
the music,
music. I apologize, and I do want to talk about audio. That's actually what originally got me to get to this part. But so when you look at this kind of thing, and I know that maybe you don't have a hand in the music score. I don't know if you do, but what have you? Maybe you're just being surprised too by the tracks. Is it? Would you say more classical, more synth? Is it like what are you picking up? Like, what's the audio sound to you? Techno.
It's hard to pinpoint, I would say, but like Jesper. I mean, we worked with Jesper on both Vermintide 1 and 2 as well. So we have a long-standing relationship with him. I've actually, first time I met him was this summer when we were in LA doing press. That was the first time I actually met him. He's super cool. But what he actually always does, and he did this back with Vermintide as well, he starts with the enemy and the setting and the enemy. Like in Vermintide, he looked at the Skaven and tried to come up with what would Skaven music sound like, and that's where his sort of
tribal
standpoint came
at
from.
times.
Yeah, and now I'm paraphrasing, so I might
not
be 100% right, but I'm pretty sure he was like looking at Hive City and like this gigantic machine type city. How would that sound, and how would that kind of music be? I don't know how to categorize the music, but it's some kind of like gothic techno classic music. I don't know. It's really hard to pinpoint, but it is really fucking good. But it is really, I don't know. I love music and I listen to a lot of music, but I wouldn't know what really to say that this was, but it is fucking good.
I think when you look at a lot of games, I mean, you know, because I do cover music, sometimes it just misses, and you know, you get a game where you're like, why is this, you know, why does this sound like something
when they
like
play hip hop and like Mortal Kombat?
Well, we see that in trailers, hip hop in a Mortal Kombat trailer, and you're like, I don't have any. I like a lot of hip hop, and I certainly love a lot of rap. But I'm like,
trying to appeal to the kids, you know.
You're right, and yet, and a trailer is of course way different than a game. But I can tell you that I can sing or hum many moments when I've met a character in a game. It obviously speaks to me as a person. Like I love that kind of stuff, and I love his music. I think he's very good at understanding.
Yeah, Jesper's awesome.
He's very good at understanding devs too. So, like when I was talking to Elijah Chuck, who worked on, he did Forbidden West here recently, but he also did. How I knew him was from Dead Rising 4, and then Tim, what's his Austin Wintory. Mm-hmm. And you talk to him, and they sort of, some know how to talk to a developer, and then some sort of just do their own thing. And I think with him, he's probably the perfect fit. Obviously, you guys knew that from Vermintide. You don't need some podunk like me telling you that, but it's like it works well when that guy knows. Like even with Skaven, because there was something about the music where it's just sort of, you know, where everybody's coming from, and there becomes a theme, even if it's dynamic music, where they know how to hit they use Ys really well, and they know how to hit that loop just at the perfect time, to where like that first Skaven comes in, or it builds up because the game director is telling you, hey, a spawn is coming. And then that music sort of just barely pops up. And we've seen
when a horde is coming. And
what's the worst though? When the game pops audio prior to the bad guy, and you're like, oh, you ruined it. How many times have you walked in a room and it's like da 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 da, and you're like, all right, we already know the bad guy's coming. I think he's very good at. He's got that layering down where it's like. And I remember talking to Austin Winter, and he was well above my head. But he was talking about, like, he even took into account sometimes if a character was dead in the story or not, or if a person had done a mission, and he added vocals in one and no vocals in the other, because he was pretending that person who was alive was singing or was dead and couldn't sing. And I was like, dude, that's meta, right? That's like, phew. But people forget how popular music is in games when it adds, it can add something that is intangible, but also instantly noticeable.
Yeah, and it is super difficult, I think, because it is completely different from doing music for like a movie or doing music in general, because you have to, just like you say, at any point something could happen. Like we can't control exactly what's going to happen when. So the music has to be ready to react to what the players are doing at any given moment, or in our case, even the AI director, whatever it comes up with, like it's going to throw you like a monster comes out of the wall and does something. It needs to react like that, and it has to go from being like ambient to becoming okay, it's showtime, and it has to
flow,
and it can't know for how long it needs to be like that. So it has to be able to keep going, and it doesn't become repetitive and boring or whatever. So I am super impressed by how these guys do it, because it has to have a bunch of layers that you can add and you can take away, and it has to be able to go from 0 to 100 in like no time. And it's
and it can't even take into account measures or anything, because if you kill the guy right away, then the game's got to be like,
it has to be it's over.
I was talking to Justin Bell. He used to do Obsidian, now he's at Sony, and Justin is always talking about why his software. He's always complaining about something. He's like me, where it's like there's always a crash. But talking to him about the inability to prepare, which is different. And then Austin was telling me a cool story about, you know, somebody says, hey, we want an official soundtrack for the game. And he's like, okay, let me tell you something. There is no official soundtrack for the game, because that's not the way the game works. technically, just compare whatever you're listening to. That's the official, and then he writes his own. He builds the official soundtrack for the game, and then they sell it. But people just don't get it, man. It's a big deal, and so is sound. So, for example, if anybody's listening and you hear me talk about sound and you fast forward, I'm telling you, well, that's fine, but you shouldn't, because, for example, things like Valhalla, which had a real glitch, and is a known problem with Valhalla, where they sampled it at the wrong rate and they can't fix it, and you get a lot of tinniness and you get a lot of layers that you can't separate. And then you play Vermintide and you hear like hitting somebody with a shield, and it sounds exactly like what a car door hitting a person sounds like. It's perfect. It's because that shield is the size of a car door, of course.
Yeah.
And when you get all those kind of sounds, do you have feedback for that kind of stuff? For example,
constantly.
Okay. So for the laser gun, you can be like, this needs to sound like it burns more, or whatever. You guys can
definitely.
Okay.
It took us a long time to figure out the right sound for it, especially stuff like that, like the last gun. Like, what does it sound like? It's like stuff like that is like, in reality, it probably wouldn't make a noise at all. But
right. No, we know it wouldn't. Yeah,
but that's just super boring. So we just went, no, rule of cool. It has to make a sound, so it makes a sound. But the hard thing with feedbacking on sound is when it's good, you don't think about it. It's usually when it's bad, you think about it. So that's a tough one. But yeah, sound is super difficult, and I agree. Like, it is one of the most important parts of game making, especially making like melee combat, especially. That's like, it is animation, it is sound, and it is VFX. That is what makes it feel good. If one of those isn't working, it feels like shit. So you have to have all of them, and you have to have them timed perfectly, and they need to be spot on. If one of them is bad, it's just like, what is wrong with this? It's so boring. It feels terrible. This game sucks. It's no fun. And then all of a sudden, you get it right, and it's like, oh, you're doing exactly the same thing. Like the mechanic is exactly the same thing, but it just feels like, oh, this is awesome. I love this game. It's so much fun. Like, because like when you break down what is an FPS, you point and click on things on a screen.
Right. That is an FPS. Yeah.
It is like you're pointing at stuff and you're clicking on it. That is what it is. Like, if you really break it down. So for that to be fun, it has to have awesome sound, awesome animations, and awesome VFX. Without that, it's just super boring, clicking on pictures on the screen, and it's no fun at all. So yeah, sound is super, super important, and it should get a lot more credit than it does. But I think the problem is that people just, when it's good, you don't think about it. You don't think about that in a game. Nothing makes a sound. Like there is no sound. You start out with, but you take for granted that when you walk on a floor, it sounds like walking on the floor.
Yeah.
But it, like, without somebody actually making that sound, you're walking on the floor, nothing makes a sound. So it's not until it's there that you go, oh fuck, this sounds awesome, and all that stuff. So that's super difficult.
That's interesting, because people tend to notice the bad and not the good. So what do you think, like in your perspective personally, something that's very difficult or requires a lot of time, or you put so much care into it that people just take for granted? And
that's a good question.
Notice,
what gets taken for granted, Victor?
I think it is definitely probably a lot of the time the stuff that costs the most and takes the most time.
Oh damn!
It's probably like the big explosions or big animations of stuff happening, and the gamers. I think of this myself when I play games. Sometimes you just you're playing the game and something like explodes and there's animations and all that shit, and you're like, turn around, walk away, go do something else. You don't even look at it, because you're like, oh, okay, whatever. Like, and so a lot of the time, especially like in the level design, we put a lot of effort into like this thing that has to be like, oh, and then when you play it, like they're not even looking at it. They're looking the other way, or they're doing something else, and it's like, oh fuck, wait, we just put half a year into getting this looking right, and like, oh, look at the animation, look at here comes the VFX. It took us 2 months to get that VFX, and they're like, yeah, it's an explosion.
Or speedrunners, they're just speed running through my game.
They're just speed running, and it's like, so that's the thing. It's a classic trap to fall into as a developer, to put too much time into those things that people just go, It's like I expected the door. I expected the door to open when I opened the door.
I feel like on the other hand, if you didn't put that much care to it, then it'd be noticeable. And people would complain, right?
Of course. So you have to do it at the same time, but it's like it can feel really sort of, well, why are we doing but you have to find the balance, because it's like the balance of knowing when it's enough. Like this is good enough. Like it's gonna. The whole, it's more important to put more time into every piece of the game instead of us putting 100 hours here and nothing here. So all of this sucks, but this is fantastic. So you need to like, okay, we only put 50 here and we then put 50 everywhere else, and then it's going to be good.
It's funny too, when you look at you guys, you look at all these game creators, they're all like their own. Tarantino, is that his name? The director? Yeah. Or Nolan, where they're all their own directors, except in a game you have 50 of them, and they're all arguing over what they think is important, right?
Yep.
And people, in a weird way, you did it is funny because Jack of all trades maybe isn't wanted in your character, but in your layering, you almost do want it to be a Jack of all trades, because you want a little bit everywhere. And I do a lot of 3D testing for audio for the reviews, and I got to tell you, you get a Gears, turn the audio off, and suddenly it's not Gears. It's ears. Yep. You're just like, because you're missing all the sound. You're like, this is nothing. Yep. Halo, the airiness that Halo has this top-in crystalline almost, when you go into open areas, that it's not even really a sound. It's that it's that where all the sounds are open.
Imagine in Halo, you have these big floaty jumps, right? The sort of trademark of Halo. Imagine jumping off a cliff and you just go, and you land. Instead of going.
Yeah. Yep.
And the sound is what makes you feel that you're jumping off
the
a
movement
cliff and accelerating. You're probably not accelerating even. Like, it's probably 100% fake. It's just like,
you mean like the werewolf in Skyrim?
No, but it's the same trick as like there's a trick that games do a lot of the time where you sort of fob out a bit when you run.
Skyrim does that.
So it feels like you're running faster.
Yeah.
So that allows us to actually make you almost not even run faster, and just feels like you're running faster. I'm pretty sure, like in Gears of War, when you do the
roadie run, baby, the roadie run.
Run. That is probably not a lot faster than just running normally.
But they make it look faster.
Because they zoom out the camera a bit and do all that stuff, and it feels like you're running like 2 or 3 times as fast, but you're actually like running like 0.5 faster or something.
Right.
Like that. So that and a lot of that is like sound, camera movement, and all that stuff that just makes it feel good. And if you don't have that stuff, it just feels like boring. Like
it is funny too. Shield recharge sound in Halo will be with me till the day I die. I'll have Alzheimer's and not remember my own name, and I'll still go and you just know it. And again, I don't want to everybody to think that's all I care about, but when I do 3D audio for a game and there's an explosion behind me, and in your game in particular, Vermintide and Darktide, you have enemies everywhere, and I don't think people really realize how important even basic stereo surround can be. And then when you get into your 4.1s, your 5, and you can start to hear a guy behind you and go, that dude's not beside me, he's behind me, and that helps players do better. And it is funny because most of the people I know who are very good at games always have either a 4.1 or if they're good at shit, the audio, they've got it cranked, they're listening very carefully. And a lot of the games I've noticed that continue to do well have pretty good surround audio, just because it does help, especially in a competitive game, because it can tell you in Halo multiplayer, I can tell when somebody's 2 rooms and above me. And so it's just like, that is eyes. I mean, you're not looking, but you absolutely can go, he's up there. Like, I know exactly where that guy is and where he's running. It's vital. And I can't wait to hear it in this, because you guys have to do something different. There's no forests. There's none of these wide open places. And so to hear all of this and how occlusion's handled and all that stuff is actually really exciting to me. When you guys do audio, how many audio people do you have doing the actual audio work?
On Darktide, we are there's 3 sound designers, so doing like weapons and environmental stuff and stuff like that. Then we have 2 VO guys, but then we have 2 more. I think we're 7 sound guys in total. nowadays.
That goes to show you.
I should know this since I'm ahead of the sound. I should know this. But
that does show you. What else you got, Abssii? You got other questions?
Wait, let me pull it up. Touch on that. Did that. Oh yeah, I had this question, but you touched on it. You touched on it before. That you touched on like Left 4 Dead being like the main inspiration for the game. Do you guys have like other inspirations or other games you look at that kind of influence your development towards Vermintide and Darktide?
Nothing as specific as Left 4 Dead, like not in the same. I mean, Left 4 Dead, it sort of set
that's the weighted
rule
standard.
book. Yeah, it's sort of that was the rule book for how to do this. And the biggest rule we took from them was the co-op is not an option, it's mandatory. Like there are things in this game where you can't handle it alone. Like if you get, like in Vermintide, if you get taken by a gutter runner in Darktide, it's the chaos hound. There is no way for you yourself to save yourself. You have to be saved by your friend. That's like that is the number one sort of Left 4 Dead rule that they set, that I think a lot of other co-op games failed on, where they sort of allow single players to do everything themselves, so you don't have to cooperate, which then leads to people not cooperating. So that's like the rule number one that we took from them. I don't know, so many games. Like I would say it depends on whatever game the designer is playing at the moment. That will be the game that is inspiring them at the moment. Like right now, I will take stuff from Wrath of the Lich King because I'm playing that, and like earlier this year when I was playing Elden Ring, I would take things from Elden Ring, and like so it depends on. There's so much, but I definitely World of Warcraft has been an inspiration because all of us have played World of Warcraft. I know another designer called Marcus and Martin, our CEO, played a hell of a lot of what's it called, EverQuest. So they're big EverQuest fanatics. So that's a lot of stuff comes from there. Destiny, I think, is a big inspiration when it comes to itemization and stuff like that. But also other games. I think Outrunners actually has been a big inspiration on how we handle loot this time. And I think they had a lot of good ideas when it came to just the itemization of that game. Was really smart. I don't know. It's all over the place. A lot of games. But yeah, Left 4 Dead is the one that is like, it's the obvious one that's like there's no sort of way about it. That's just sort of it. But yeah,
you touched on loot. Loot's become very weird. So going back to like obviously the classic days, like old WoW versus now, you got, I feel like you got more long lasting dopamine where when you like work towards like a good piece of gear, you know what I mean? But now I feel like there's a lot that it's like, okay, we're throwing this at you randomly. Okay, you got a legendary now, So do you guys have like any things that influenced your way to handle loot? Like how did Outrunners?
But I think you're super right there. Like you have to. It's really tough. Loot is itemization is super hard to get right. But yeah, we want to have. You want to get like you want to be rewarded. Maybe like let's say you've played one night, so 2 hours, 3 hours a night. You want to have something at the end of that night. Like you want to feel that you've progressed, that you're at least you've moved towards some goal. So we have systems in the game now where you Darktide has a very different way of acquiring loot than Vermintide did. We've given more options to players to be able to pick what they want in different ways. We have shops where you can go buy weapons. We have like a contract system where you can go and complete tasks to get a currency that you can then sort of have long-term goals for. Like this weapon is awesome. It is, but it's going to take me maybe a week of working to get that
amazing
thing and stuff like that. So so yeah, but we want to have both. Like you said, I agree. Like it's become so sort of, I don't care. Like I'm changing, like underwear. It's every day. Like new. You wanna have that thing where you're sort of working towards this goal. But at the same time, it needs to be sort of achievable, or you want to be able to sort of affect how you get there. But yeah, it's super difficult to do it right. I hope we're in a better place this time around than we did before. But yeah.
It's funny too, because cool. back for Blood, like I said, started and it had a ton of issues with loot, with its card system, and I really, I bounced off of it, even though I really liked the idea, and there were some parts I did actually like, but it just didn't hit perfectly. And it does show that, you can, not that you want to, no developer wakes up and says, "Man, I cannot wait to make a shitty game." Like no developers ever done that.
I can guarantee that has never happened.
Yeah. So when they do hit it wrong, and I mean wrong, just it's not working, and it's not fulfilling. The one cool thing about today's day and age, is that ability for them to go in and be like, you know what, man, we're not dropping the sword as much as we need to, or we're not, we're not giving the game 2 hours at this at easy. Maybe has a slightly different feel than 2 hours at hard, and maybe you're like looking at 2 hours at hard and going, okay, it can't just be hard. We have to figure out a way to make sure that person gets something. Also, one person's version of easy is definitely different than another person's, and mine dramatically changes depending on the game. Where I might be amazing at a game, and then another game I'm like, damn, I'm getting my ass kicked. So when it comes to loot, I think a lot of companies, what Abssii is also noticing is that a lot of companies use it as a crutch, and they're like, what we're gonna do is, and I'm not bringing up Borderlands because I think maybe people might think that. I think Borderlands actually sort of knows what they're doing, and it's worked for the most part. Just like pinatas of guns, and you're looking through each one, looking for a certain color. Even got filters now, which will be like, don't show me anything that's not purple or whatever. But a lot of people use it as a crutch, man, and the gameplay isn't there. And I think that's one of the positive things about Vermintide, originally Vermintide 2 as well, is that you guys were like, all right, well, the gameplay is going to matter, and then we'll do these things. And those things build on stuff, and you feel pretty rewarded. Go ahead.
Yeah, and in Vermintide, you actually felt more powerful when you got geared.
Oh, dude, nobody wants the plus 1% weapon. That may work somewhere else, but
a lot of the games these days, you get better gear, and it's just, okay, now you can do this content.
Yeah.
Rather than, you actually, this benefited you in this way, and now you could see it happen in game,
Yeah. I think it's a sort of a weird mystical art. Some people get it right and some people don't. And then if it's not backed up by the gameplay, no one's going to care anyway. And I think that's what happened with Outriders. Their level design wasn't the greatest. They had some really good stuff, but some of the stuff that game does, you're just like, Anthem had amazing 2-minute sections of gameplay. Amazing. And then it stopped you from playing the game. There were times where I was doing Anthem going, if they had extended this 2 minutes to 20 or 30, and then you look at Avengers and you're like, your locations are terrible, but you've got these Avengers. Like, why is this not setting the world on fire? Like, how does this, and so all these games have different parts that come together. And I think it is a kudo to you guys that, we'll ignore Escape from Dead Island. You guys have been pretty good. I looked up Lead and Gold. Is that what it was called? And Lead and Gold actually, strangely enough, got some... I don't say strangely because I'm not saying it didn't. I actually was surprised. I looked up on Wikipedia. There were a couple websites, or at that time, maybe magazines, who actually really liked Lead and Gold. And I don't think I even knew.
It is pretty good. It is pretty good.
Yeah, I don't even think I knew what that was. So was that like a Western co-op shooter, or what exactly was that game?
It's a 4v4 shooter, a third person.
Interesting.
Western. It's a little weird game, but it was awesome. It's pretty cool actually. It had a lot of themes that has actually moved forward from all of our games. Even back then, it's a PvP game, but it's actually has a lot of the sort of cooperative ideas that we still use. Like, it had a system where if you were close together, you got bonuses, and each class had its own bonus. So the optimal way was to stick together and with 3 different classes, like you got more sort of crit ability, or you moved faster and stuff like that. So even back then we had these ideas of cooperative play, that it was more fun to play together, and sort of that it started way back in the Lead and Gold actually.
Yeah, have you played it, Abssii? Lead and Gold? Because I have no experience with it.
I haven't heard of it until right now, actually.
Yeah, I looked it up this morning when I was looking up something else for the AI, and I was like, what the hell? Like, I guess I missed this one and all the talk about...
Yeah, but I mean, it was small. We were really small, and it was pretty successful, but like in a first game type of way. Like, we were really happy with it, but it's not like it blew up the whole internet.
Well, I got to tell you, man, I was reading some of the reviews, blurbs, you know, and I was actually like, they were, you know, some would be like, oh, blah blah blah, a little bit this and here, but it was quite positive. I was like, that's really cool. I didn't. Yeah, it was with Paradox. And not a bunch of DLC. So prior to Paradox selling you 150,000 parts of DLC for your game,
$2,000 game.
They wanted us to do a hell of a lot of DLC.
Well, we won't go into that. I don't want to burn any bridges unless you do. But that is funny that like they're known for that.
Kidding.
You know.
I'm just kidding.
Okay, gotcha. Before I go on to the AI questions, which I'll separate in a little bit, is there anything in particular for Darktide that like that you feel maybe not surprised, but that you feel might elevate this past Vermintide, the Space Edition? If you get my, I don't know any. I'm trying not to. That's certainly not negative because I love Vermintide.
No, but I do think like it is very much its own game. At the same time, it is definitely it's 100% from the guys that did Vermintide. But I think when you play it, you're gonna. It's not just sort of Vermintide in space. It is a different game. It is the ranged combat, the ranged enemies, the setting, everything. It is a very different game, but still the same sort of like you know.
I mean I get it.
It is more of the same. If you like Vermintide, I think you're gonna like this, but you're also not gonna feel like this is just
Vermintide in space.
If people say that this is a skin. This is a skinned Vermintide, I'll be very upset because like it is not.
What I've seen, you know, of the trailers, making sure people know I haven't seen anything nobody else has. When it comes to the trailers, what I have felt was that it would not be possible to say it wouldn't be, and I've never heard this, by the way, it wouldn't be possible to relieve and say it was a Vermintide, you know, chain, like skin or whatever. It's not, it's fundamentally changed. And like, I saw the up close. And what I was really surprised by, at least for me, is that a lot of these big, really busy games, including Vermintide at times, because I love being the dwarf, which is a restricted view anyway. You know, you're at everybody's waistline, but it was my favorite. You know, there's a lot of chaos, right? You know, there's times where you're like, there's just bodies everywhere. What I felt, I could be wrong. I felt that Darktide, from what I'm seeing, looks a tiny bit cleaner. Now, that could also be because you have a different difficulty. As you said, you have different groups of enemies, and you can pick up a ton of small, weak ones, and maybe that's not what we're seeing. But what I like...
I think it is. I think it is.
A little bit cleaner.
A little bit less sort of messy in a way. But it's fucking chaotic. It can still get insanely chaotic.
I just felt like I could track it better. I don't know why.
I think you can. I mean, it is... I would just argue that in the same way that Vermintide 2 was a better version of Vermintide. I think Darktide is it's like we've done it before, we're doing it again. It's just I'm not saying that Vermintide is like this is better or anything, but it's a different game. But it is an evolution of the same game. Like and we learned things hopefully going like each iteration. So I would argue that it is.
Do you have any Abssii anymore? I want to talk about some cooking, and then I'll do the 20.
Like,
go for it.
Things about, you know, how...
Well, first of all, Victor, how long do you got?
I'm fine.
Okay, go for it. Go for it, Abssii.
No, just was going to nerd out a little bit about like the different, kind of the different ways you can customize each, not like cosmetically, but like the classes themselves or the play style of like, let's say there's like 4, you know, you said zealots, for example. Yeah. Like, can they play differently in different ways, or is there like customizability within the trees?
There's the same. I expect similar to Vermintide. Like there's talent trees and stuff like that, so you can select different talents, and that will allow you to play differently. But in the same way, I would argue that like in Vermintide, it's actually the biggest difference is the weapon you choose to use, because like each weapon in Vermintide and in Darktide is a different sort of play style. They have different. It's not just sort of. It swings like this and it does the same. They have completely different animations. They have different things that they're good at, bad at, stuff like that. And it's a very big difference playing a zealot with a power maul, or what I'm bad at the real names, but like a two-handed hammer, and compared to like a knife, or with a auto pistol or an auto gun, or with a stub revolver. Like it's a very different playstyle. So that's a big difference. I think also the weapons this time around, the traits are more interesting than I think we were able to do them in Vermintide. They will have a bigger impact than
very nice.
Vermintide once did. So
I'm guessing that was
also gonna.
Yeah. That was a pain to balance, probably.
It is, and I like a cool thing with Vermintide and Darktide, with the sort of not going the whole SpongeBob enemies type route, is that it feels pretty good. Like, but the problem is that it doesn't give you a lot of room to do like, it's easier if your enemy has 1 million hit points, you can then do 10 times damage, and it actually makes sense, and it does a difference. In Vermintide and Darktide, if we do 10 times damage, there's no difference. You're still gonna kill him in two hits. Like, what does it matter? So we're sort of shooting ourselves in the foot by doing it that way, but we're sort of gameplay first. So, but at the same time, I do think that a lot of the traits that we're working on right now for the weapons are more interesting, and also there's going to be more difference. In Vermintide, the sort of base stats of every sword is the same. Mm-hmm. So one sword each, but in Darktide they actually have like, you can have a stub revolver that has more damage and less damage, or faster reload and stuff like that. So even inside a weapon class, there's more variety that you can find.
Very cool.
So you can find, like, I want a auto pistol that shoots really quick, but it's maybe doesn't do that much damage, because I'm all about just spraying and praying, and I want stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to customization and stuff like that, and different weapons, you definitely do see the games where it'll just be like a +1 to the damage, and you're just like, it just doesn't pay off, man. I want something to feel different, look different. Looks are a big deal to me when it, the world doesn't like to admit that, but looks matter in games to me. And I want to see my gun look different or feel different. And I love that you were talking about some. I think you said some customizables might be slightly connected to the background of a character.
Yeah.
And the idea of that sort of reminds me of Mass Effect, where I don't know if you guys remember, but you pick, like, you're a soldier, you're, blah, 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 you're blah, blah, blah. And at the very starting, there was like a narrative change. And then after that, you didn't really see a lot, but it was enough. The thing is, a lot of gamers, including myself, you don't need to do a lot. Sometimes just a little bit will make somebody be like, oh, and then you're role-playing it almost in your head. If the game developer meets you halfway, they don't have to make the entire thing change. It's just meeting you a little bit of the way until the gamer's putting their story together anyway in your game because of how you made the story. So the idea of some of those cosmetics tying into that. What I wanted to ask, though, your 4-player split, 4-player or 3-player co-op, 4-player.
Four. Yeah.
You see a lot of games doing 3, and I wanted to ask you as a developer. I've come up with my own reasons for why 3, including possibly making everything always feel a little unbalanced, and they like that because you don't have northeast southwest. There's always a corner that's not covered. Have you guys ever discussed around, like, is it always just been 4-player for sure, and here's why? And then also, does that impact how many classes you start the game with prior to DLCs or expansions?
Yeah,
good question.
We've never. There's never. I don't think.
Never been a discussion about 3.
No. We have discussed, like, adding like game modes or stuff like that, where you could be like 2 or something like that.
Okay.
Or some ways of, like, a circumstance or something like that where you could change that. But I don't really know. For in Vermintide. It's different in Vermintide and in Darktide, because since in Darktide we allow multiple of the same class, so we don't have that problem. But in Vermintide, the reason why we did 5 instead of doing 4 was so if you wanted to play one class and that was already taken, at least you had 2 options.
Right.
So you didn't sort of end up with whatever was left if you were the last one to the party. So that was the reason why we did 5 in Vermintide, to always give players at least one option.
Yeah.
In Darktide, that's not a problem anymore. So we can have 4 classes, since you can be 4 Ogrins. It doesn't really matter anymore. So yeah. So that's a difference. But yeah.
I've just noticed it in a lot of games. I never knew if it was throughput, like they're just the graphics, it's just like, hey, 4 is a lot, you know, threes seems
I
to
don't.
work.
I've also noticed the 3-person player sort of co-op trend. I don't really know where that is coming from. I don't know. I guess it's probably makes it easier. I mean, there's less variation to consider. Like, there's not there 3 people. Like, the more you add, the more you have to balance. There's more, like, the balance matrix just becomes harder. Might be the case. I don't know, but I haven't really thought about it. But yeah, I have noticed it, but I haven't really thought about why that is.
Yeah, it seems like it works for some games, right? Like, it works fine, and then others it doesn't. I'm personally a much bigger fan of 4. I always have that thing where it's not the classes, it's the people who want to play. Where we want 4 people to play, and only 3 can in those 3-player games. And you're like, oh, crap, 1 person can't come to join the party. But I do get why they do it. Do you have anything else, Abssii, before I start asking him about food?
No, with that 3-player, 4-player thing. So I know in Vermintide, obviously, let's say I just want to play with a friend with no other people, no matchmaking. There's 2 other bots, right? Have you guys ever looked at, like, scaling it down to only 2 people in the whole, like, 2 characters playing? Or were you always like, okay, it's always going to be 4 and we're just going to substitute with bots instead?
Yeah, it's always 4, but we are playing around with ideas of allowing you to do
like you said, a mod, like, maybe.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Dude, 2 really good players. Have you ever seen, I'm sure Victor has, but you'll watch somebody who's really good at Vermintide, and I'll be like,
yeah, but there's this, in Vermintide, we have this community thing called True Solo, where the first thing they do is that they kill off the bots, and then they go. It became this thing. There we had a player called JSAT that was, like, really big in the community, and he was insane playing the game. He played it insanely much, and he just became so good at it that we were like, what the fuck is this guy doing? How is this possible? You're not supposed to be able to do this stuff.
Right.
And so he sort of invented this True Solo mode. And they also they had True Solo, and then there was white runs where you would play in Vermintide. You always had your starting weapons. You couldn't get rid of them. And the reason was why you had them was if you threw out all your weapons, you got rid of them. We had to have something to put in your slot, so you couldn't get rid of every weapon. That was, like, the technical reason why we kept them in. But it ended up becoming a thing where players were playing with the sort of default weapons.
God.
And they call it the white run because they were white weapons. So True Solo white runs was like that. Then you're like the god of Vermintide. So that became a thing.
That's my favorite thing in games when they give you a playground where you can make your own challenges, like Elden Ring, where it's like, okay, I'm going to do this whole thing with a bow, this whole thing without ever dodging,
or naked, or without leveling up, or
Didn't somebody do a no hit already?
Oh yeah, oh for sure. There's no hit. There's so many different. So I saw a girl kill Millennia. Was it Millennia?
With one hand.
With not even with a Dance Revolution.
Yeah, Dance Revolution. I saw the other girl beat one of the characters with just using the sound, which also once again does indicate, you know, how sound is important. But she knew the patterns and she knew what sound indicated.
Okay, so without watching.
Without watching. And it just it makes me mad. Makes me mad. I don't have that skill, man. Like, I see somebody do that, and I'm like, dude, it took me like 10 times to beat that guy. And of course, they took. That's one thing we forget is that, you know, that's why they're good. But at the same time, you see the best of, right? We all see that. It's the Instagram of like game playing where they're like, look at my one time, and then you do find out it took them 40,000.
That's the thing. Like, you as devs, like, so I watch, you know, a lot of speedrunners, and they. Like, people think, okay, they're not appreciating the little things in the game, but they've played the game so many times that they know exactly where everything and everything, you know, they appreciate every little thing. Do you guys like look at like your speedrunning community, or do you guys have like a kind of like speedrunners within the Vermintide community?
I haven't seen anything like to the sort of extent of like the speed running. What is that called? The games done quick type of thing, where they where they like complete like Zelda in 2 seconds and stuff like that. I haven't seen anything like that. But I mean, this JSAT guy, when we found him, it completely changed how we looked at our game and like how we balanced it and how we doing Vermintide 2 we changed a lot of things due to the way he had played. We actually flew him and 3 other guys over to Stockholm. He lived in the States, so we flew them over to Stockholm just to hang out with us. They got to play Vermintide 2 before anybody else had seen it, and we discussed with them like, okay, so try to break it. What do you do? How what types of what things can you see that will sort of you will be able to sort of use and stuff like that. So yeah,
that's amazing.
It has very much changed how we design and do stuff.
Yeah, no matter how good your bot is or whatever, there's always some things you can see that are bottish. And so the idea of somebody who's that good and watching them and being like, oh, I didn't know if you do these 3 things and then jump off this rock, you can slide down the side of the rock and not die.
Gain
and
momentum, do some crazy
Halos that way. Remember the Halo stuff where you're just like, oh, go ahead, Victor. Sorry.
No, but there's a lot of momentum things that they find where they're like they do some kind of move and they do it in a certain rhythm, and then they can sort of trigger the whatever, and it just goes faster and stuff like that.
I know you guys. I mean, I don't know, but last question. One of the things I've been seeing that has lit my fire are remix modes as mods. They have, and you guys already have this sort of with your system, your AI looking at how the game is going. Have you ever seen Sekiro remix mods where they push a button and it's all the enemies are all different places?
No.
Dude, I'm telling you,
I've heard about it, but no, I have never actually looked at it.
It's magical, man, because the developer, especially in a Sekiro game, you guys are already doing this in a way because of the way you've got everything. But watching Sekiro or Hitman has one, and watching them hit a button and then totally different enemies in a spot that the developer had spent hours, game hours making sure these 2 enemies are very difficult here, and suddenly it's an ogre. Fuck those ogres, by the way, in Sekiro. But you got those ogres, and they're grabbing you, and that's the thing about game players that they feed back directly to, and mod makers. That's another thing. Mods are so crazy, and that's the last question I have. I did get a question. Are you guys looking at mods, mod ability in the future, anything? And if you can't talk about it, it's totally fine.
All I can say is that we're not doing it, at least not at launch. For the future, who knows? But we have changed how we do the game. It is now server-based, so that makes it not really possible in the same way as we did in Vermintide, because Vermintide is peer-to-peer and this is dedicated servers, so you can't do it in the same way. So, but I don't know. I mean, down the line we might do it, but it's not going to be there at the launch.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And then ramen. So let's discuss this. So you said, so as a big, I mean, like I would say maybe even bigger than video games is food for you and cooking and stuff like that. You say you're working on ramen. I think that's what you said at the starting. And I'm like, dude, ramen is like, how do you work on ramen? Because to me, ramen, there's one way to cook ramen. Cook it until the noodles are noodly and then eat them. So what do you mean by you're working on ramen?
It depends on how ambitious you are.
Say it's you. Say it's you. Say somebody's coming and they like ramen.
It took me maybe 2 years to be able to make a good bowl of ramen.
I need him and Andy on the same podcast because Andy's a chef too.
Andy,
but now I do my own broth, so that takes like a day.
Oh shit.
You cook a broth, and then I do my own chasu, so the pork that you braise in soy and meat and stuff. That takes like 4 hours, and then I do my own noodles, so that takes about 3 or 4 hours as well, and stuff like that. So I do everything from scratch, and I started out with doing like I started with like what they call like the 3-minute noodles, the cheap ones.
Exactly.
I started with those, and I did my own. I took like one of those broth little cubes.
Yeah.
Started like that, and then I evolved from there. So then I started doing my own broth, but still used the sort of Insta noodles. And then I decided to learn how to do noodles and all that stuff. So it took me about 2 years until I felt like, okay, now I can do all of the parts correctly. And I watched a lot of YouTube clips and whatnot.
I know from playing Yakuza actually that in Japan there's like 3 different ways that people like ramen. You can have it like more hard, and then more soft, and then right in the middle, right? What's your favorite?
I mean, just like pasta, you can have like different al dente or like different how hard you want them. I think, but in Japanese, I've never actually had this. I can't remember what it's called. It's tsukemen, I think, where you have the noodles on the side and you have the broth. Instead of having the noodles in the broth, you get a bowl of noodles and you get a bowl of broth and you dip the noodles in the broth and eat them like that. I never had that because there's no place in Stockholm that does that. So that's, I think I need to go to Tokyo to have that actually.
So that would change the texture of it, and that's why people, because you get that crunch with the noodles, I guess,
and you can also have a even more sort of the soup can be even stronger. So because you just dip the noodles in the soup, you can have the soup being even like have a stronger flavor. I think that's the reason that you can have it like thicker and stuff like that.
We talked about this before. You picked up you just picked this up naturally, right? You just started, you realized you sort of liked cooking, and then over time
cooking is like my therapy, or like my meditation. Like I can come home from work and be like tired or like a bit sort of anxious or whatever, and then I just go cook and it all goes away. And so like cooking for an hour every day is like my meditation. And so
are you a silent cooker, as in you like to do it on your own, or
right.
That's
usually nowadays I put on my headphones because I have 2 kids. I put headphones, put on like a podcast, and I cook. That's how I do it. And I like to do everything myself. So
you mean all the parts, like you were saying with ramen?
Exactly. I don't want to get help. The thing I hate the most is like you're having dinner for somebody and they come over and they always have to be like polite and say, "Can I help you with something?" No, but can I help? I'm like, no, please get out of the kitchen.
Get the hell out of here! This is mine. This is mine.
Don't help me.
What? Did this start when you were young? That you started to realize you like to do this?
I think I used to like to cook with my mom when I was small, like really small. I always liked going grocery shopping and stuff like that. And then when I moved from home, and I was like 20 or something like that, I moved in with a friend of mine. And the deal was I got to sleep at his apartment for like half a year if I cooked. So I cooked every day.
That's a wicked deal, man. That's awesome.
That's a good deal.
Yeah, so I think that's like where it started, but I think it started way back with my mother. Like she always cooked really good food for us, and I always liked helping her out. So I guess, and all of my brothers are the same. I have 2 older brothers, and we're all like pretty good cooks, and we all have our own style. So and like the only thing during summers, we have a summer house where we hang out, and like the only thing we talk about is like, okay, what we're gonna have for dinner, like what are we doing today, who's gonna cook, and what are we gonna eat, and that's like what we discuss.
That's awesome though. Sort of also not just grocery store, but connecting you to your mom and stuff like that. Like I think a lot of us have something that we connect with our family, and I hadn't really. I mean, I hear a lot of times from some people like they remember Sunday dinners, but it's not the cooking they remember, it's the result. So it's interesting you got the cooking part out of it, where a lot of people I know, I don't remember how Andy, by the way, Andy Lanique, he's done PR, he worked for Microsoft, that's who I'm talking about. Okay. He's a huge chef, he just got his new, by the way, shout out to him, he got his new chef podcast going up where he makes food from games. So like Resident Evil food, and you know he's cool. Like working on that. Well, I'm trying to go fly there and do one with him. He's always been big into the family kind of stuff, and cooking is comfort, which is so interesting to me because cooking stresses me out. So I'm speed. Obviously, you're thinner than me. Maybe that's where we found our problem right there. But
I look thinner than I am. I'm pretty big.
Head up, right? But when it comes to that, is there anything you guys go? You said to the cabin. Or a getaway with your family. Yeah. What else do you do for like de-stressing? Or cooking sounds like it's main one. But do you read? I think we've talked about this before. Are you a big movie watcher? Actually.
I watch a lot of movies and I love music. I listen to a lot of music and I watch a lot of movies. And I also have like a I realized that I have like a sliding scale of what I do, and it's gonna sound bad, but like on the bottom is YouTube. When I'm really tired, I watch YouTube, and then comes like series or like watching series. Then comes movies, and then comes games. Like games is for me. That's like you have to be active and you have to
correct.
So when I'm really tired, I can't play games. I'm too tired. So then so sadly, I have to say that YouTube is on the bottom.
I don't think that's really sad. I think we would all agree. YouTube it's passive, right?
But I love YouTube. I watch a lot of YouTube.
Oh, dude, it's
Sam.
remember I mean, you're not as old as me. I think I'm the oldest one in this group. But like I remember I would go to the library and I would get like 6 books. I would always check out under 2 names because they only let you get 3. And I was a voracious reader. So I had 2 names and I would get, and she let me, she knew, obviously it was the same friggin' kid standing in front of her. But I would get, and to me, I think almost everybody has a level of investment, and like TV shows or YouTube being the lowest makes sense to me because you can turn it on and it's not, you're not required. Where games are high, games are quite high, and I especially like if I'm reviewing, games are it. Like everything's shut down, it's headphones. But have you found truthfully, you can be truthful. Have you found it harder to enjoy video games because you're a developer?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. Almost the opposite, maybe. But I do. Wow. I don't play as much anymore.
Right.
I don't think that's because I'm a developer. I think it's just because I'm
2 kids.
Getting older and more. Yeah, 2 kids. I have like an hour a day, maybe where I can, or 2 where I can play.
Yeah.
So I find it harder and harder to go into like bigger games, or like I can only do one every 2 months or whatever. I played like Elden Ring for like 2 months and stuff like that. Yeah, but and then I don't play anything for maybe 2 months, and then now I'm playing World of Warcraft. Is different. That's like I can always play World of Warcraft. That's
it's like on the side, right? You don't even count it.
I'm not thinking. I'm just playing. It's just that's a different type of game. But I can sort of feel that I have. Sort of like adverse feeling towards like starting a big game. Like I think the next one for me is going to be Ragnarok. God of War is like, I love God of War.
That's a good
2018. One. That's going to be my next one. But yeah, but I don't think it has anything to do with me being a game developer. Actually, quite the opposite. Like I love playing games and being just sort of insanely impressed of what stuff they are
more
doing.
Appreciative. Yeah.
Somebody asked me that a couple days ago. Like they were like, "Why do you still review?" And I'm like, "Dude, my curiosity for games knows no bounds. None.
True.
I will wake up at 3 a.m., work out, and then I'm instantly reading, watching GDCs, watching your guys's, like if you guys do a trailer, somebody does a trailer that I like for a game, and I'll watch that, and then I'll look at every little thing, and it's not dead. So I know why some people, it maybe burns them out. I don't know if it maybe Fatshark has maybe a more healthy style, I don't know what it is, man, but I do hear some who they say don't make your hobby your job, and I get it. I totally do get it, but at least for me, and it sounds like for you, it hasn't become a thing. Go ahead.
I will say though, as like a developer, like after university and like learning, going to software engineering and all that, like I have become way more critical about UX design.
Oh God,
I've become way more critical, man. Nothing bothers me more than bad UX. That's like the one big thing,
Yeah, I think that's important.
I'm in a stage right now where it's like, okay, I play like a big game where I can immerse myself and only play the game every once in a while. But like between that, I just like I have like YouTube or a podcast or something. I just like those games like Factorio or something like random, just to see numbers go up and something you can like idle while you like watch something, or like WoW or anything like that, and then a big game comes out and I just immerse myself.
It's interesting because Abssii and I both, I read the most, I think. But Victor, you didn't really bring up books. Is that just been something that...
No, but I'm mildly dyslexic. So I think I've always had a hard time reading. It takes me quite a while. I used to read more when I like had more energy.
Yeah.
but yeah, it's been a while now actually since I read it. A full book.
I think it's especially when you're working on computers and stuff. There's some very good stuff. My wife is into psychology, and that's what she does. And you start reading the differences in people's ability to focus if they're accustomed to the internet, developing games. If somebody's looking at tree structures in some Unreal Engine for years, sometimes it's difficult to pop out and try to follow a book because your brain is, now becomes so patterned on some other way. In fact, you were doing it when you were mentioning like, the developer names of a bad guy in your game versus the name we may know, and that's just what happens. And it's as somebody who loves reading, I do like at times wish more people would read, but it also just seems like a sign of the times, man. Like I know a lot of people will watch a YouTube spoiler video for 30 minutes instead of watching a movie, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? What are you doing?
There's so much content out there, man. There's just so much content everywhere.
But I can definitely see us using the like what's it called, dolly? For doing like
textures, maybe
quick. No, but quick concepts. In an early design stage, when you were like you're doing like a level design documentation, like coming up with ideas. I can definitely see us using dolly for like mood stuff and like that. But I mean, so far at least, it doesn't compare to what we actually need, because what we actually need is detail, and what it doesn't do good is detail.
Yeah, right.
Like when you really look at the picture, they usually don't make sense. They make sense in like a glance, like it looks, this looks like this is the mood we're going for, but they don't make sense in the okay, how we're actually going to build this. Then it would be completely useless. But yeah, I can definitely see us like going forward that I like in a design phase, I just need a picture to tell the story here. Just go do a dolly, like I want whatever, like right, take a section of the page and just put it in there and see what you get, and like, oh, I'll take that one.
It is going to be interesting to see where everything goes, like I said, for creatives in particular, because in the past when manufacturing came up, a lot of it was about people who worked with their hands, were hard workers. Robots replaced them in some places, but there's always somebody who doesn't want to do something. So I'm not saying displaced people had an easier chance at those times. I'm just simply saying that sometimes that transfer was might have had more options. And one of the things I've been worried about is I have a lot of friends who are writers, a lot of friends who paint, a lot of friends, and one of my friends is a concept artist. And I sent him a Mid-Journey. You can even tell it what artist. And so I said Sid Mead. I don't know if you know who that is, but he's the guy who basically created, the Mass Effect look and all the old. And dude, I mean, he was pretty nervous about it. He was like, because one of the problems with concept artists a lot of times is a developer may say, we want an idea. And so they are blurting ideas at that time. And especially you'll see it in the art of Valhalla, where they show concept art, which isn't super detailed. It's just like,
it's just
that feel, that mood, like you said. Yeah. And it's going to be an interesting time. I think it's highly advantageous for health. And I mean, we're seeing AI that can find cancer easier, like those guys, just spectacular in that format. But I think also it sort of brings us back though, and maybe that's one of the reasons why it was giving some of the answers. But in the way you guys are using AI already for your what's it called, Dungeon Master, what do you guys,
AI director,
AI director. Last question, because this brings me back, man, that was weird. Did you make big changes to the AI director between Vermintide 1 and 2, and then between Vermintide and Darktide? Or is that more of a system that just can make its own changes because of how it's made?
There's refinements, but nothing super drastical, but it's definitely refinements and like improvements. It's all based on like the initial setup that we've done. It's been pretty close, but I mean, at the same time, yes, we have definitely done improvements, but and probably the coders would murder me and say like,
we've done nothing, and they're like, what are you talking about?
We did everything. But I mean, it's fundamentally it's the same system, but we've improved it over time. Definitely.
Excellent. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap this up? Any cool stuff you can talk in anything? I don't want to.
Anything you want to promote or like say about the game?
Do you have a new trailer dropping for any stuff in the next
that you
can talk about?
There will be coming soon, where we'll have a big closed beta test that we will announce the dates of.
I'm signing up.
I can't tell you exactly when, but it will be soon. So if you're interested, keep your eyes to our channels, and you will know soon when it's hitting.
Make sure to subscribe to Fatshark's channel. I've been checking their stuff out. Were you on a stream too?
No.
Somebody who I thought it was you. Okay, got it.
No, I think it was Mats, and it was Steven, our producer, and Mats, the combat designer.
Yeah, and anybody who knows me, I talk about my love for. I mean, dude, you guys have made a phenomenal series. I don't know what to say, man. Like, not only are you a cool person, we got to meet O'Neill, of course, and a bunch of people at that event, but Vermintide's pretty. As a big fan of Warhammer since before. You guys made Vermintide and stuff like that. It's really very close to what I didn't know I needed, because I didn't even know that type of game was possible. And I just got to say, man, hats off to you guys, because not only do you change stuff if it's hit, and you've made mistakes. You guys have talked about that. You've made amazing strides in this thing, and in that thing, and you've talked about those as well. But you're always listening, and I think that Personally, Darktide's probably one of the #1 most like look forward games. I know everybody's looking forward to God of War.
For 2022.
Blah, blah, blah. I mean, I like God of War, but it's not the same. I'll play it once.
That's insane.
I'll play it once. Darktide, I will not play once. I will. And dude, I gotta say, man, you guys, I don't know what magic sauce you guys got with that up close smashing each other combat, but fuck,
yeah,
it's
the
good.
Melee is nailed. Like, it's so hard.
And I want to see how ranged works, because I personally didn't mind using the dwarf's crossbow. I enjoyed it in Valhalla. So the idea that that's just going to be augmented and you're still going to be able to do up close, which was why I wanted you on too, to talk about like where your you know, your dividing line is. Man, I'm excited. I mean, dude, I would say Darktide's probably the highest. Like, I know people want God of War, but God of War is already God of, like, it's a thing, and I'm gonna play it, and that's great. But Darktide, I want to live in. It is.
You know, it's gonna be good.
And, well, not. I don't even mean that, Victor. I just mean I know who's in it, and I know what the path probably is. I didn't even know you guys were doing different voiceovers for as you got more powerful. So like, there's something that attracts me to these kind of games when they're good, that I find myself, because I have Vermintides all installed. Like, there's a few games, I don't know about you guys, but I usually have like 10 games. They just don't get uninstalled. And Vermintide and Vermintide 2, they're those.
Something you
so
can always
kudos.
go back to. It's definitely my favorite like Left 4 Dead like game.
It is.
Even over Left 4 Dead, honestly. I always have it. I always
way over Left 4 Dead for me. I don't know what it was.
Awesome to hear.
Yeah. You guys have done it. I mean, well, it's humbling, but dude, you can tell when you're talking about it. And like I said, talking to other people, is O'Neill still at, is Liam still at Raw Fury?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
But you guys have. I remember playing that game. Talk about somebody who was way better than us. When we tested that in that little small office when I first met you guys. But you guys, like, every time I talk to you guys are one of the, I don't know, man, it's just one of the few companies that you've got a pretty good dialed in, even if you know something's not working. And I think right now in gaming, that's something that a lot of gamers are worried about. A lot of gamers are starting to get worried that everybody's NFTs were a big deal. You know, Ubisoft is like, here, let's do NFTs. And I'm not saying NFTs, I don't even want to go there, but it's what I mean is overarching. You hear that a lot, where it's like the companies aren't looking back. And I've personally felt that despite even me not liking something, I can always go, oh, I get it. And I want to also thank you for clarifying something that a lot of developers do not clarify. And we've been talking about it in a lot of podcasts. And that's that when you make a decision in your first game or in the game, it may not allow you to make a decision later that you want to change, even if everybody wants to change it. Like, there's some core skeleton framework you've got, and you're like, guys, we would love to do. It's not as easy as just plugging something in. And you're very good at explaining those things. And I think that more people should ask that of devs, because I do think a lot of negative publicity would probably be pulled away just a tiny bit if a dev was like, oh, we would, we can't. Like, it's just the way we want to do this, it would break other things, or it would make other things.
Yeah, like another example of that, like we when we released Vermintide 2, we had on our roadmap to do dedicated servers. And we tried to do dedicated servers for Vermintide 2, but we just couldn't do it. In the end, we gave up. We had a guy working on it for like 6 months or something like that. And in the end, it was like, this is not going to be worth it. It's not going to be what the players want, because it's not going to work like they think it's going to work because of how we built the system, how the network is set up. So it's not gonna be what they want. So we can't do this. So in the end, we just had to go out and say, like, sorry guys, we know we said we're gonna do it, but we're not gonna do it anymore because we can't do it. Like, we want to do it. We understand that you guys want it, but the way this game was built, it just doesn't make sense. So that's the reason why when we did Darktide, we had to decide from the get-go to go dedicated servers, and then rebuilt the whole engine for that. Like, the whole code base is different. Like, how everything is handled is completely different than it was in Vermintide 2. So that's like an example of stuff. Like, it's not that we didn't want to do it. Like, a lot of people got really pissed off at us, but like, we just couldn't do it in the way that they wanted us to do it. So we had to just say like, sorry, but it's not gonna happen. And that's just how it is.
Yeah, I sometimes wish you the best of luck on launch, by the way.
Dude, launch is always a scary thing. I'm sure he's gonna have a little less hair when launch comes up. He's pulling it out worried.
Gamers get so mad because they think it's so easy, you know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, just fix it, guys, you know.
Yeah, I'm relatively stressed about the launch day. It's gonna be...
Especially with Game Pass, right? You're gonna have so many people just like
and so everybody, if you get a chance, check out the channel, subscribe to that. You're going to be able to see, you know, when that beta comes up at some point in the future. Make sure to sign up for it. Once again, Victor, dude, it's a pleasure to know you, man. Outside of games, I love talking to you, and inside of games, it's even more enlightening for me as a reviewer to come away and go, oh, well, I wasn't thinking about that. And it's awesome because all that does is allow me to say that in a review, and then hopefully that gets spread out or in a podcast, and more people can sort of understand at least how you guys do it, and then compare and contrast that to others. And yeah, man, it's been a pleasure knowing you. It's a pleasure having you on. This will be the 4th or 5th time. Because you did a 3-person, you did the one, so 4th or 5th time. But thank you also to everybody watching. If you get a chance, you know, jump into the open beta. I'm going to be the number 1 player. What was his name? What was the number 1 player on Vermintide you guys had?
J-Slat?
J-Slat?
J-Sat.
It'll be K-Sat. Watch out for K-Sat. That dude's going to rock. Peace out, everybody. Have a good one.
Thanks for having me, guys.